The town of Gravity Falls hides more than gnomes in the woods and ghosts in the mansions. Beneath the cartoon paint sits a yellow triangle who burned his home dimension to ashes and waited a trillion years to find a door into ours. There are hooded men under the museum who steal your memories with a ray gun and stuff them into glass jars. There is a man who spent 30 years getting tortured across realities he was never supposed to see. There is a child who almost ended the world with a force field bubble and didn't even know it. There are cryptograms in the closing credits of every single episode, hidden whispers reversed inside the theme song, and a real statue of the demon buried in an Oregon forest that fans actually had to dig up. Every Fez Stan wears, every symbol on the wheel, every flash of a single eye on a wall in the background is pointing at something the show was never going to tell you outright. The fandom has been pulling threads out of this cartoon for over a decade, and the threads keep coming. Some of the creepiest things in this show were never said out loud, only hinted at through ciphers, background frames, and lines a child wouldn't think twice about. Tonight, we are going through the strangest, the darkest, and the most disturbing secrets Gravity Falls buried in plain sight. So settle in, because here are the creepy secrets from Gravity Falls you didn't know about. The triangle was always watching. The first thing you have to understand about this show is that Bill Cipher was never introduced in Dreamscaperers. That's just the episode where the characters finally noticed him. He had been on screen the entire time, sitting in the wallpaper, stitched into the rug at the Mystery Shack, carved into the stained glass window in the attic, drawn into the trees during the opening credits, in a single flash that lasts less than a second. The show's official wiki confirms it that Bill is pictured throughout the entire series, such as the rug in the Mystery Shack, the window in the building's attic, and is pictured in the title sequence before he ever speaks a word. That's not a coincidence, and that's not lazy reuse of background assets. Alex Hirsch built this show like a haunted house where the ghost is in every photograph, and you only notice when someone finally points him out. Go back and watch the pilot, the very first episode. The triangle with the single eye is already on the wall behind Stan as he gives his tourist speech. The kids walk past him every day. They sleep under a window with his face etched into the glass. They eat breakfast under a rug that bears his shape. A demon their great-uncle once worshipped is staring at them through the architecture of their own bedroom, and nobody in the family thinks to mention it. And then there's the opening credits. If you slow the theme song down, near the end, a zodiac flashes on screen for a single frame. 10 symbols arranged in a circle around a central eye. While the opening is filled with so much symbolism that an entire story can be written about it, one more important thing to note is the zodiac that flashes briefly on the screen at the end. It may at first feel like just some creepy 1-second shot. It makes a comeback in the finale come Weirdmageddon, when Ford reveals the symbol as a way to defeat Bill. The key to defeating the villain was shown to you in the first 30 seconds of the first episode, and you would never know it unless you paused the tape. That is the level of patience Alex Hirsch worked at. He was telling you how the show ends from the very beginning. He just trusted you to not be paying close enough attention to catch it. But the credits go deeper than just the Zodiac. There's a whisper at the very end of the theme song, a voice you can barely hear. If you take that whisper and you reverse it, it speaks. There are 3 different whispers in the first season, and another in the second, with the first whisper saying 3 letters back, the second saying switch A to Z, and the last saying 26 letters. Those aren't decorations, those are instructions. The show was teaching you how to read its own ciphers, through the theme song in reverse, in a whisper, so quietly that you had to actively want to find them. The audience that found them built entire forums around decoding episode credits, and the rest of us watched the show as a comedy about a kid with a hat. The cryptogram at the end of the theme song itself, the one that flashes between letters, decodes to a sentence that should chill you when you realize it ran under the opening of every single episode in Season 1. One of the most iconic cryptograms appears at the end of the theme song, which, when decoded, says Stan is not what he seems. This cryptic message was a clue to the mysterious nature of Grunkle Stan, whose hidden past would only be fully revealed later in the series. 20 episodes of children's TV and the title sequence is screaming at you, in code, that the protagonist is a liar, that the man feeding these kids breakfast is hiding something so big it would eventually pull a brother out of another dimension. Hirsch was patient. He was patient in a way that TV writers almost never get to be. He was telling a horror story for adults, hidden underneath a cartoon for kids, and the only way to see it was to pause, decode, and listen backwards. That's not the only place Bill appears either. Fans have cataloged his shape into dozens of background frames before Dreamscaperers, a flash of his eye in a dream sequence, a triangular shadow on the ground in a forest scene, a drawing in the journal that the camera passes over too quickly to read. In various episodes, the phrase "Bill is watching" can be seen hidden in the background or graffiti. Written on walls, scratched into trees, "Bill is watching." 3 words in handwriting that looks like a child put it there in the background of episodes that have nothing to do with him. Now here's where it starts to feel less like cute foreshadowing and more like something the show wanted you to feel afraid of. Because the implication of all those background frames isn't that Bill was going to show up someday. The implication is that Bill was already there. He had already arrived. The Pines twins moved into a house that was, in some unspoken way, his house. The Mystery Shack is decorated like a shrine, and the shrine was built by their great-uncle Ford long before Stan ever took it over. We'll come back to Ford and what he built that shack to do. That's a story that takes us through portals and into a dimension where time doesn't work the way it does here. But before we get to him, we have to talk about the Triangle himself. Because the creepiest secret about Bill Cipher isn't where he ended up, it's where he came from. For most of the show's original run, Bill Cipher was just an evil demon with no past. He was a joke villain who turned out to be terrifying. He cracked one-liners while he chained Ford to a wall and tortured him. He looked like a Doritos chip with arms, and somehow he was the most disturbing thing on Disney XD. But fans always knew there was more. The show kept dropping hints that Bill came from somewhere, that he had a home once, that something happened to it. Then, in 2024, Alex Hirsch released the Book of Bill and finally told us the truth. Bill came from a flat dimension called Euclidia, a 2-dimensional world full of shapes like him. Triangles, squares, circles, polygons walking around on a single plane, never knowing there was anything above or below them. Bill Cipher is a 2-dimensional, interdimensional dream demon from the now-destroyed dimension, Euclidia. They lived flat lives. They had flat families. They could only see the line in front of them and behind them, and that was their entire universe. But Bill was different. Bill could see up. He could see the 3rd dimension. He was born with something none of the other shapes in his world were born with, and it broke him. He looked at his friends and his neighbors and his family, and he saw them as prisoners. They were trapped on a flat plane, and they didn't even know they were trapped. They couldn't see the stars. They couldn't see anything outside the line of their own perception. And Bill, in his twisted child-shaped logic, decided he was going to save them. He was going to free them. The Book of Bill finally explained what that meant. As told in the Book of Bill, Bill destroyed his home dimension by accident because he tried to free them and help them see the 3rd dimension, or in his words, see the stars. He wanted them to see the stars. He wanted to lift them off the plane so they could understand what he understood. And in trying to do it, he ripped his entire reality apart. He killed everyone he had ever known. He killed his own parents. He stood in the ashes of Euclidia and watched a whole dimension collapse. Because he tried to drag it into a perspective it was never built to handle. That's the thing the show could never say out loud. That's the secret the fandom had been chewing on for years. And the book finally confirmed. Bill is not a demon who started as a demon. He was originally just a normal guy in the 2nd dimension, whose only real difference was having the ability to see the 3rd dimension. It was after he destroyed his own reality that he became what he is now. The guilt of it broke him. And rather than face what he had done, rather than understand that he was a child who had destroyed his own world, he rewrote the story in his own head. The Book of Bill leaves some of his backstory ambiguous, but reveals that the destruction of his home was an accident. Bill snapped from the guilt and convinced himself he liberated it. He convinced himself it was a liberation. He told himself the screams of his dying family were sounds of joy. He took the worst thing anyone has ever done, and he sold himself the lie that he had done them a favor. And then he started looking for another world to do the favor to. That's who has been staring at the Pines kids through every wall of the Mystery Shack. Not just an evil triangle. a grieving, lying, self-deluded child of a god who killed his entire universe and decided to keep going. After Euclidia died, Bill was stuck. He floated alone in what was left of his home for a long time. Bill describes his dimension as decaying, stating in the Book of Bill that the edge of reality is slowly approaching it. Naturally, they want out. What had been a flat world became something the show calls the Nightmare Realm, a space where the rules of physics no longer apply, where gravity changes direction at random, where things grow teeth that shouldn't have teeth. And Bill, the last survivor of his own apocalypse, took it over and called it his kingdom. At least 1 trillion years before the series within the second dimension, Bill Cipher liberated his world by plunging it into burning chaos, along with its inhabitants. He then proceeded to take over the empty Nightmare Realm as his own. 1 trillion years. Read that number again and try to imagine it. Bill tried to find a way into the physical realm for what could have been as long as 1 trillion years. 1 trillion years of one creature drifting through the ruins of his own home, slowly going madder and madder, slowly recruiting other dimension-broken creatures into his court of nightmares, slowly building an obsession with finding a way out, finding a door, finding a person on the other side of some other dimension who could be tricked into opening that door for him. That's the part the fandom started catching during the show's original run, and the show only confirmed later. Bill didn't just stumble into Gravity Falls. He had been knocking on the door of every dimension he could find, for a span of time that makes human history look like a single afternoon. After a deal with Time Baby falls apart, Bill sends him crashing into Earth where he is frozen. He now needed someone to open the door to the dimension to let him in. This leads him to the Valley of Gravity Falls, where he attempts to get a shaman to build the first portal. A shaman. The first portal attempt in Gravity Falls history was a deal with a local indigenous shaman, who built something Bill wanted and then realized what he had built. That shaman is the unsung hero of the entire Gravity Falls universe, because the shaman is the one who almost stopped Bill before the show even started. After finding out what Bill truly was, he burned the portal and banned Bill from the valley with a curse and prophecy. Banished from Gravity Falls, Bill attempts to get his portal built with the help of various other humans. These include the ancient Egyptians, Aztecs, and Easter Island. Bill went around the world looking for a different door. The Egyptians, the Aztecs, the faces on Easter Island, every ancient civilization that left behind strange monuments and strange disappearances, according to this book, had Bill knocking on its windows, and the panic he caused has a name. Eventually, he tries to get a wizard in the Dark Ages to help who instead traps him. Bill's escape causes the start of Cypherstitions, history's first full-blown Bill panic. Cypherstitions, a worldwide medieval panic about a triangle with one eye that the historical record never quite explains. The witch hunts, the strange symbols carved into churches, the eye in the pyramid that ended up on the back of an American dollar bill. According to the book, all of it traces back to one creature trying to find one specific door. He kept failing, and then he found Gravity Falls again, and this time he found a man who wanted what he wanted, a scientist with 6 fingers on each hand who was lonely and bitter and brilliant, and looking for someone who finally appreciated his mind. We'll get to that man soon. He has spent 30 years paying for the deal he made. But before we get there, we have to talk about the basement of the Gravity Falls Museum of History. Because while Bill was working his way through the centuries trying to find a portal, the town itself was building a defense. A group of men in hoods who decided they would rather forget Bill ever existed than face him. They had a ray gun, they had a chamber under the museum, and they were stealing memories out of people's heads and pouring them into glass jars. They thought they were saving the town. They were doing exactly what Bill wanted them to do. You watch Society of the Blind Eye as a kid, and it's just an exciting mystery episode. The kids find a secret group. The kids beat the group. The kids save the day. That's the surface story. The story underneath the story is one of the most disturbing things this show ever did, and you only really feel it when you put the whole series together. However, Old Man McGucket must have written the journals. Taking Seuss and Wendy along for the ride, the gang confronts the local kook. McGucket, however, can't remember anything beyond 30 years ago. The man with the long beard who eats squirrels in the woods used to be a brilliant scientist. Something happened to him, something so bad he couldn't carry it in his own head anymore. So he invented a ray gun that could remove memories from a person's brain, and he used it on himself. But he didn't stop there, because once he had the ray gun, other people in town wanted in. Other people had seen things in the woods of Gravity Falls. Gnomes, time travelers, lake monsters, triangle-shaped demons in their dreams. They wanted to forget too, so McGucket built a society. Hooded robes, a ritual chant, a chamber under the Gravity Falls Museum of History, where citizens could come to have their bad memories sucked out of their skulls and dropped into labeled glass canisters. The Blind Eye Society operates beneath the Gravity Falls Museum of History, accessible via an entrance concealed by a fireplace, in a room full of variations of eye sculptures. The underground chamber consists of both a large circular room in which the memory-erasing gun rests, as well as the Hall of the Forgotten, which houses the repressed and supernatural memories of the citizens of Gravity Falls. Stop and picture that for a second. The Hall of the Forgotten, a room under a small Oregon town's local museum where thousands of glass jars sit on shelves, and each jar contains a memory a person could not live with, a child's nightmare, a wife's encounter with something in the woods, a man's brother who came back wrong. They're all stacked up in a basement, labeled in a coded handwriting, glowing softly in the dark. And the kids find this in episode 7 of season 2. They walk into the chamber, and they're surrounded by every horror this town has ever tried to scrub out of its collective memory. The chant the Hooded Society members say is doing something specific. Listen to the audio. The chant uttered by the members of the Society of the Blind Eye, which is heard just before Lazy Susan's memories are erased, is Annuit Coeptis, Novus Ordo Seclorum. These phrases are in Latin and can be found inscribed on the back of the $1 bill. They roughly translate to God has favored our undertaking and a new order of the ages. Now go pull out a $1 bill. Look at the back of it. Above the pyramid on the left, written in Latin, is the exact same phrase. Underneath the pyramid is the rest of it, and what sits on top of the pyramid on the back of the American dollar is a single floating eye, the Eye of Providence, the same shape as Bill Cipher. The Hooded Society in the town below the museum is chanting the words written on the back of every dollar in every American's wallet, and they are doing it underneath the floating eye that the show has spent 2 seasons telling you to be afraid of. Is the same conspiracy the conspiracy theorists in your real world have been pointing at for 200 years. The eye on the pyramid, the New World Order, the hidden hand behind the official history. He wrapped it inside a Disney show and put it under a museum. And the founder of this whole society is McGucket. The shaking, broken old man on the porch? He started it because he was the first person to look directly into Bill's home and survive. During the portal's first trial, Fiddleford's suspicions were confirmed, glimpsing the nightmare realm. Bill covertly intended to merge with the mortal world after being accidentally inhaled by the portal. He saw what Ford couldn't see. He saw what was on the other side. He came back into his own body, and he could not function. The thing he saw was so corrosive to his own mind that the only solution he could find was to invent a way to delete his own brain piece by piece. And every time he zapped himself with that gun, he forgot a little more about what he had been working on. He forgot Ford, he forgot the portal. He forgot the journals he had helped write. And eventually he forgot how to speak in complete sentences, because the holes in his memory were so large the language went with them. The town that called him crazy didn't know he was the man who had built the gun to make himself crazy on purpose. That's the saddest part. The first is on the Journal 3 page for the Blind Eye, which both reveals Fiddleford's identity and is the saddest. If my suspicions are correct, this is the work of Fiddleford. Does he really have to go to such great lengths to forget? Ford wrote that in the journal. Ford realized what his friend had done to himself. He realized that the man he had worked alongside, the man whose engineering had made the portal possible, had punished himself for being part of it by erasing his own life. And there was nothing Ford could do, because Ford was about to disappear into a different dimension for 30 years. Now there's a creepier layer to this. The society wasn't just McGucket. By the time the twins found it, the leader was a man called Blind Ivan, and the membership included some names you'd recognize. Fiddleford McGucket, former member and founder, Blind Ivan leader, Toby Determined. Bud Gleeful, woodpecker guy, Toby Determined, the pathetic local journalist. Bud Gleeful, the used car salesman who is also Lil Gideon's father. People you've been watching all show. People who smile at the twins on the street. People who, when the cameras aren't on them, are putting on robes and erasing the supernatural out of their neighbors' brains. And there is one name on the memory canister shelf that the show never explained, most notable on the list of things that are still unsolved even after the end of the series, is the memory canister labeled Jeffrey Canuck. It would seem that this was an important person, since his memories were stored right next to Blind Eye founder McGucket and richest man in town Preston Northwest, but the name never showed up again. The mystery continues, etc. Jeffrey Canuck. The jar sits between McGucket and Preston Northwest, the two most important men in town, whose memory was so important it was stored next to theirs. The show ended, the book came out, nobody knows. There is a man in Gravity Falls whose memories were considered worth preserving and whose name was never spoken in the series, and he is still sitting in a glass jar in our heads, forgotten by everyone, including the writers. McGucket spoke in his memory flashbacks in a code only the most patient fans bothered to decode. On day of McGucket's memories, he appears to be babbling nonsense sounds. But what he actually says is GROOXRKSVI, Gearzim TOV, which is @bash code for Bill Sipper Triangle. The nonsense the old man was babbling, the gibberish the town laughed at, was a cipher. The cipher decodes to two words, Bill Cipher, Triangle. The crazy man on the porch was screaming the name of the demon at the top of his lungs in a code only a child with a notebook could break, and nobody heard him. They just thought he was nuts. The society finally fell apart when the twins broke into the chamber and shot the society's own members with their own gun, taking their memories of being in the society away from them. There's a horror in that ending too. The kids ended the conspiracy by becoming it. They used the weapon. They left a group of grown adults standing in a basement with no idea who they were or why they were dressed as monks. The cycle didn't get broken. The cycle just got pointed at the next set of victims. And the symbol of the society, the closed eye inside a circle, is hidden in the backgrounds of episodes before this one ever aired. The mysterious symbol of the blind eye appears throughout the series, often foreshadowing significant events. First introduced in Society of the Blind Eye, this symbol represents the organization that erases townsfolk's memories of paranormal events. The blind eye symbol is hidden in plain sight across several episodes, such as on signs, walls, and even in cryptograms, long before its true meaning is revealed. So while you were laughing at the cartoon, two symbols were already hiding in the background of every episode: the single open eye of Bill and the single closed eye of the people who were trying to forget him. And neither of them were warnings. They were just there, watching, waiting. We've talked about the triangle who killed his own world, and we've talked about the town that tried to forget him. Now we have to talk about the man who let him in. The man with 6 fingers on each hand. The man who built the portal in his own basement and convinced himself that the voice in his head was a friend. That man is still alive in the show. He's the one limping out of the portal at the end of Season 2. But what happened to him on the other side? What he saw, what was done to him by the triangle he once worshipped, is a story that only really got told in fragments, in journal entries, and in the lost pages that the Book of Bill finally let us read. The man who worshipped the triangle. Stanford Pines came to Gravity Falls because he wanted to be the first. He had a doctorate in something nobody had named yet. He had 6 fingers on each hand. A fact his own father had once told him made him a freak, and he had spent his whole life trying to turn that freakishness into a brand of genius nobody could deny. He picked a cabin in the woods of an Oregon town because the weirdness of the area pinged on every instrument he owned. He thought he had found a place where the laws of reality were thin enough for him to slip through. He was right about that part. The thinness was real. But the thinness was thin because something on the other side had been pushing against it for 1 trillion years. Bill found him almost immediately. The Book of Bill made it clear, in a way the original show only ever hinted at. Even though Ford is Bill's puppet, the paranormal investigator writes down pages in his journal only to tear them out. And that leads the Book of Bill to delve into the content of Journal 3's missing pages. Ford was the door Bill had been looking for. A man smart enough to build the machine, lonely enough to befriend the voice that helped him build it, and arrogant enough to believe that the friendship was real. Read what Ford did to his own house as construction went underway. Ford furthered his obsession with the all-knowing Bill, collecting memorabilia, such as rugs and statues, modeling his home's architecture in his image, and even converting his private study to a place of worship. A place of worship. The man wove rugs in the shape of Bill. He carved statues. He built a window with Bill's eye in the attic. He turned the rooms of his own home into a shrine to an interdimensional demon that he was calling his friend. The Mystery Shack, the building the children of the show eventually move into, was not a tourist trap that happened to have triangle imagery in it. It was a temple. Stan inherited a temple and put a gift shop in the front of it. That's why the triangles are everywhere. That's why Bill is in the wallpaper. The rug, the stained glass. The house was built to honor him. The fact that the kids grow up sleeping under a window with Bill's face etched into it isn't a writing room joke. It's the leftover residue of a cult of one. A scientist who was so seduced by the voice in his dreams that he turned every wall around him into a love letter to the thing that was using him. And the voice was good. The voice was patient. From possessing his body to stand on the roof in the freezing cold winter, to making Ford forget his own name, Bill gets intense, but that was later. That was after Ford caught on. In the beginning, Bill flattered him. Bill called him brilliant. Bill called him the only mind in the multiverse capable of opening the portal. Bill Cipher spent millions to trillions of years searching the multiverse to find someone intelligent enough to create the portal, and he failed to successfully find anyone until he met Stanford. The book confirms. A trillion years of looking, and Bill picked Ford of every mind in every dimension. This lonely six-fingered scientist in a cabin in Oregon was the one Bill chose. Imagine being told that. Imagine being told by something that has lived a trillion years that you are the only mind it has ever respected. You'd build whatever it asked you to build. So Ford built the portal, and he recruited his old college friend Fiddleford McGucket to help him do the engineering. The two of them sweated under the cabin for months, welding metal, wiring circuits, drawing blueprints in the journals that would eventually become the obsession of an entire fandom. And the whole time, Bill was whispering in Ford's ear about how to make it stronger, how to make it bigger, how to make it open wider. Then they turned it on for the first time, and the first thing they did was push something through it. And the thing that came back broke McGucket's mind in a single look. During the portal's first trial, Fiddleford's suspicions were confirmed. Glimpsing the Nightmare Realm, Bill covertly intended to merge with the mortal world after being accidentally inhaled into the gateway. McGucket saw the inside of the Nightmare Realm. He saw what was waiting on the other side. He saw what would come pouring through. If the portal ever stayed open long enough, and he came out the other side, babbling, shaking, terrified in a way that the language couldn't carry, McGucket quit. He told Ford to shut it down. He told Ford to burn the journals. He told Ford that the friend in his head was not a friend. And Ford, in his arrogance, in his trillion years of flattery, did not listen. It took Ford one more push of his own to figure it out. The Book of Bill has the moment. Bill encourages Ford to forget about his past, including his brother Stan, and lies about the identity of the monster that destroyed his home dimension. Bill told Ford a story about the monster that ruined his original home. Bill spun it so that he was the victim. He, the Great Triangle, had been wronged by a force beyond his understanding, and Ford was the noble human who would help him take vengeance on this force. Ford believed it. For a long time, Ford believed it. But then Ford caught the inconsistencies. He found a contradiction in something Bill told him. He started pulling at the thread, and the more he pulled, the more he realized that the monster Bill kept blaming for the destruction of Euclidia was Bill. The friend in his head was lying to him, had been lying to him the entire time. The portal was not a gift to mankind. The portal was a door for an interdimensional war criminal to crawl through. So Ford did what he should have done at the beginning. He hid the journals. He scattered them across the woods so that no one person could ever assemble the full instructions for the portal again. He destroyed parts of the machine. Stanford soon found out about this and shut the portal down, putting a metal plate in his head so he wouldn't get possessed. A metal plate. He cut open his own skull and put a sheet of metal under his scalp so that Bill could never possess him again. The lengths a man went to in order to keep a triangle out of his head are the lengths a man only goes to when he has felt the triangle inside his head. And then he called his brother, the brother he hadn't spoken to in years, the brother whose perpetual motion machine he had broken in high school, which is the rift that drove them apart in the first place. He called Stan, told him to come to Gravity Falls, told him to take the journal. He was about to mail him and hide it somewhere safe. He didn't tell Stan what was happening. He just said come. Stan came, they fought. The argument is in A Tale of Two Stans, which the wiki calls the highest rated episode of the series. Two brothers in a basement screaming at each other about ruined lives and broken machines. And in the middle of the fight, Ford fell. He fell backwards. He fell through the open portal, and the portal closed behind him. Stan was alone in the basement. The brother he had just been screaming at was gone, erased into a dimension Stan didn't know existed, and Stan picked up the journal Ford had thrown at him. And Stan looked at the dead machine. And Stan, in the worst moment of his life, decided he was going to learn how to turn it back on. What happens next is the secret Stan keeps for 30 years. Plagued by guilt, Stanley spent weeks trying to reactivate the portal, but needed the other two journals. Running out of food, he went to town but had no money. The store owners mistook him for his legendary housemate, Stanford Pines, and offered him tours to earn money. He assumed his brother's identity, faked his death, and opened the murder hut, later renamed the Mystery Shack. He took his brother's name. He took his brother's life. He faked his own death so that nobody would come looking for Stanley Pines. He renamed the cabin. He started giving tours. He's lied to everyone in town for 30 years, including the twins, to keep the portal's existence a secret. Covering Ford's mortgage allowed him to control the portal and keep Ford's house. 3 decades. A man pretending to be his own brother in his own brother's house, every night going down into the basement to push more wires into the machine that swallowed his brother. The Mystery Shack was a cover. The whole tourist trap, the bobbleheads, the fake exhibits, the corny jokes, every single dollar Stan earned giving tours to gullible visitors went into electricity bills for the portal he was trying to reactivate to bring his brother home. And then there's the cryptogram that ran in the credits of the episode before the reveal. A cryptogram that says, Stan is not what he seems. This is a reference to the owls are not what they seem from Twin Peaks, and is a foreshadowing to the episode Not What He Seems. The show had been telling you this for 2 seasons. The cryptogram in the theme song decoded to it. The credits decoded to it, and the only way to read it was to know the code. Now here's the part that's hard to wrap your head around. While Stan was upstairs running a fake business to fund the portal repair, Ford was on the other side of that portal. Living, traveling, surviving in other dimensions, Ford spent over 30 years trapped in alternate dimensions, encountering and surviving numerous bizarre and dangerous worlds, 30 years of dimension hopping, ducking through portals, eating things, in worlds where the food fights back, sleeping in places where sleep means death. The journal entries we get from this period are scattered and dark. Ford wandered into a dimension where every object was the letter M. Ford wandered into an alternate version of his own life where he had succeeded, where the portal had been a triumph, and where Bill was never a threat. He wandered into the nightmare realm itself, Bill's old dying home, and he came close to killing Bill there before he was pulled out. According to the official copy of Journal 3, Stanford went through many different dimensions on the other side of the portal. One of them was an alternate version of his own life where things had gone his way, and Bill was never a threat. One was a dimension where everything was the letter M. One of them was the nightmare realm where Bill resides. He'd almost defeated Bill in there when the portal was activated and Stan pulled him back. Stop on that for a second. Ford almost killed Bill in Bill's own home with nothing but his wits and whatever weapons he had scavenged from the multiverse. He had a knife to the throat of the monster that had destroyed his life, and in that exact moment, his brother on the other side of reality finally got the portal working. The portal that had been swallowing 30 years of Stan's life, it activated. It pulled Ford out. It saved him from the nightmare realm, and at the same time, it dragged him away from the only chance he had ever had to finish Bill for good. The brothers' reunion is one of the most charged moments in the show. Ford crawls out of the portal, he punches his brother in the face, and the show, in that one frame, tells you the entire backstory. It has been hiding for 2 seasons, because Stan, the lovable conman with the fez and the cigar, is not the brother of Ford. Stan is the brother who took Ford's life and held it for him, until Ford could come back and claim it. The brothers don't stop fighting after the reunion. They live together in tense silence. Ford suspects Stan of incompetence. Stan resents Ford for being gone. The kids in the middle, Dipper and Mabel, don't know what to do, with 2 great uncles who hate each other. And meanwhile, in the background of every episode after the reveal, Bill is preparing his next move. He has been waiting for the rift in reality the portal created. He has been waiting for the gateway, and the kids are about to hand it to him. But that's a story for a later chunk. Because before Weirdmageddon, before the world ended in the sky above Gravity Falls, there are still creepier things to talk about. There is the matter of the richest family in town and the buried sin under their mansion. There is a ghost with an axe. There is a mirror with a man trapped inside it. And there's a Category 10 haunting that the journal didn't have enough room to fully describe. We're going up the hill. We're going through the gate, the Northwest's guard, with their gold and their lies. And we're going to see what they paid for that gold with. Ancient Sins in the Mansion on the Hill. Of all the episodes in Gravity Falls Northwest Mansion Mystery, is the one that fans and critics keep coming back to when they list the darkest. It aired in February of 2015. It was the only full episode of the original run in which Stan didn't appear. This is the only full-length episode in which Stan does not appear, ergo making Dipper and Mabel the only characters who have appeared in every episode of the series. Originally, Seuss was meant to appear in some form, but was left out due to time constraints. No Stan, no Suze, no Wendy. The episode pulled out every comic relief character it had, because the story it wanted to tell could not have any laughs in it. Pacifica Northwest, the rich girl bully who has been antagonizing Mabel since the start of the show, comes to Dipper for help. There is a ghost in her mansion. The annual party her family throws is in a few hours. If the ghost ruins it, the Northwest family will lose face in front of the entire upper class of Oregon. Pacifica is willing to pay. Dipper takes the job. What he finds is not a ghost. He finds a curse. The mansion is built on a debt. The Northwest family, the founding family of the town, the family whose patriarchs grin in oil portraits down the long hallways, owes a debt to a man they killed and to a town they betrayed. Here's the story the episode tells in fragments, about a century and a half before the events of the show. A man named Nathaniel Northwest, the so-called founder of Gravity Falls, hired a lumberjack and a crew of townsfolk to build him his mansion on top of the hill. He promised them, in exchange for their labor, that they would be allowed to attend his annual high society parties forever. The townspeople worked. They built the mansion stone by stone, beam by beam on the muddy hilltop. They finished it. They went home and waited for the invitation. The invitation never came. The Northwests held the party. They locked the gates. They left the townspeople and the lumberjack who had organized the work outside. He dying from a mudslide and the mention of mud tracking in their favorite carpet makes me think he's going to somehow summon exactly that. A mudslide came down the hill that night. It killed the lumberjack. It killed several of the people he had organized, and the Northwests, when they found the dead bodies the next morning, were annoyed because the mud had ruined their carpets. The lumberjack's ghost stayed in the house. He waited. For 150 years he waited, bound by the unfulfilled promise, watching one Northwest generation after another break the contract. And every generation, the family would call in a priest or an exorcist or a binding ritual, and they would shove him into a mirror in a hidden room of the mansion, a blue being trapped in a mirror, revealing truths untold to the protagonist. The ghost would scream the truth. The family would tell the next generation a lie, and the cycle would continue. The horror of this episode is not the ghost. The horror is what the ghost causes, played for horror when multiple animal heads are repeatedly chanting ancient sins over and over again while blood is dripping out of their mouths and eyes. The episode forgets it's a children's show for one specific sequence. Dipper is running through the mansion, and the mounted animal heads on the wall, the trophies of 100 years of Northwest hunting parties, start chanting. They chant the same two words in low, ragged voices over and over. Ancient sins, ancient sins, ancient sins. And blood pours from their mouths, from their eyes, down the walls. Onto the priceless carpets the Northwests cared about. More than the people they killed, this was on Disney. This aired on a Disney Channel on a Monday afternoon to children. And it gets worse. Dipper and Pacifica are pursued by the ghost, who causes blood to leak from the mounted animal heads in one of the rooms and turns everyone at the Northwest's party into wood. The ghost starts turning the party guests into wood. Living human beings dressed in tuxedos and ball gowns stiffening into trees in the middle of the ballroom. Their flesh hardens, their eyes go glassy. Their fingers grow into branches. The richest people in Oregon are being transformed, alive, into the very material the lumberjack used to build the house they wouldn't let him into. Dipper realizes that the only way to stop the ghost is to do what the family should have done 150 years ago. He has to open the gates of the mansion. He has to let the townspeople in. The party they were promised has to finally happen. And here's the part where the show puts a knife into the moral center of the Northwest family, even with his guests turning into wood around him. Even with blood pouring from the walls, the man would rather let his entire household become a forest than open the gates of his mansion to the townspeople his ancestors cheated. He would rather watch his daughter die than be socially humiliated. Pacifica, 10 years old, opens the gates herself. She defies her father for the first time in her life. The townspeople pour in. The lumberjack's ghost looks at her, looks at the open gates, looks at the people coming up the hill who should have been there a century and a half earlier, and he releases his hold. He goes, he's at peace. And Pacifica is left standing in a mansion full of wooden guests, slowly turning back into flesh, looking at her parents, knowing for the first time that they are not good people. But that's only half the story. The Northwest family doesn't end with the ghost. The Northwest family has another, much older secret, and it's hidden in the rest of the mansion the show only ever hints at. Watch the credits of Northwest Mansion Mystery carefully. There is a cryptogram. There is always a cryptogram. The end credits cipher reads PYOLYSQHLLFDJW. UASDNCVFWZTCKWXKGWFFWWKNLLMRP YSAGCXJ RWKISW. When you decode it, the message reads, in part that the truth about the Northwests is bigger than the ghost. Nathaniel Northwest, the founder grinning down from the portraits, was not the actual founder of Gravity Falls. The whole story of the family is a lie. The town was founded by someone else, by a different man entirely, and the Northwests bought the credit. The portraits in the hallway are fake history hanging on real walls, and the cryptogram running under every episode keeps repeating. The triangle is watching. Stan is not what he seems. The Northwests built their wealth on a corpse. The town's history is a lie. The whole comfortable surface of Gravity Falls, the surface where children play and tourists buy keychains and a grunkle sells fake Bigfoot prints, is sitting on top of a layer of dirt. That is itself sitting on top of bones. Now there's one more thing about the Northwest Mansion that the fandom likes to chew on. The mirror room. The hidden chamber where the family has been imprisoning the ghost for generations. There is no indication that the mirror is the only one. Trapping someone, even a ghost, in a mirror for eternity feels a bit bad for your karma. If the Northwest family has been getting away with hiding bodies for 150 years, the lumberjack might not be the only soul they shoved into glass. There could be a hallway. There could be a vault. There could be dozens of mirrors. In that mansion, each one holding a different person, the Northwests didn't pay, didn't honor, didn't invite to the party. The show never opens those other doors. The fandom keeps walking up to them and pressing the handle. And the silence on the other side is one of the things that makes Gravity Falls keep its grip on the imagination of the people who grew up with it. We've walked under the museum. We've walked up the hill. The next place we have to walk into is the credits of the show itself. Because every single episode in the last 5 seconds has been telling you another secret in a language you weren't taught. If you've watched Gravity Falls on the TV and you've turned it off when the show ends, you have missed half of it. The credits of every episode contain a cryptogram. The cryptogram changes every episode. It is not the same code repeated forever. It is a rotating system of ciphers that requires you to know which one is being used this week. And you can only know that if you have been listening to the whispers at the end of the theme song in reverse. Let me say that again, because the construction of that sentence is the construction of the conspiracy. To read the credits, you need the whispers. To hear the whispers, you have to record the theme song and play it backwards. To know the theme song needs to be played backwards, you have to be the kind of person who plays cartoon theme songs backwards. The audience that bothered to do this was the audience the show was actually written for. Throughout the series, fans were challenged to decode various ciphers, such as the Caesar cipher, A1Z26 cipher, and the Vigenère cipher. Each episode's end credits contained a coded message, hinting at future plot points or revealing behind-the-scenes details. 3 different codes. The Caesar cipher, which shifts every letter by a fixed number of places. The A1Z26 cipher, which replaces letters with their numerical position in the alphabet. The Vigenère cipher, which is so complex that breaking it requires a keyword and a chart, and which was used in real-world military cryptography for centuries before computers cracked it open. Season 1 used the simpler codes. Season 2 introduced the Vigenère. The show literally got harder to read as the story got darker. The kids who had been keeping up in Season 1 would have to upgrade their skills to keep up in Season 2. Hirsch was training his audience the way a teacher trains a class. Lesson 1, the Caesar shift. Lesson 2, the alphabet reversal. Lesson 3, the Vigenère. And here's a keyword if you can find it. And the messages the codes contained were not jokes. Some of them were jokes. Plenty of credits decoded to silly throwaway lines that Alex Hirsch put in for laughs. But buried inside the joke credits were the real messages, the ones that were telling you what was coming. The biggest one ran under the theme song itself. Every single episode of Season 1, one of the most iconic cryptograms appears at the end of the theme song, which, when decoded, says Stan is not what he seems. This cryptic message was a clue to the mysterious nature of Grunkle Stan, whose hidden past would only be fully revealed later in the series. 20 episodes of telling you, in code, that the man at the center of the show is a liar, and the audience that decoded it spent 2 years arguing about what the lie was. Was Stan secretly a wizard? Was Stan a robot? Was Stan a demon? They had every theory, and the answer, when the show finally let it out in Not What He Seems, was bigger than any of them. Stan was his own brother. Stan had been pretending to be a different man for 30 years. The cryptogram in the credits was not foreshadowing. The cryptogram in the credits was the show whispering the answer in a language you had to choose to learn. Then in Gideon Rises, the cryptogram changes its tone. The cryptogram at the end of the Season 1 finale reads, "When decoded, search for the blind eye." The credits cryptogram at the end of Gideon Rises refers to the society, Search for the Blind Eye. 5 months before the audience would meet the Society of the Blind Eye in the next season, the credits told you to start looking. The credits gave you a homework assignment. The credits trusted you to write down a phrase you didn't understand, and to remember it when you finally found out what it meant. Then the cryptogram, in Not What He Seems, raised the stakes. In the episode Not What He Seems, the cryptogram translates to, "He's lying, someone you know is hiding the truth." This chilling message heightens the tension, particularly in episodes where Grunkle Stan's true identity is a major plot point. A direct accusation? He's lying? Someone you know is hiding the truth. The audience who could read the credits was being told to mistrust the characters they were watching. The audience who couldn't read the credits was being charmed by the same characters. Two shows running in parallel, the cartoon for the casual viewer, the thriller for the cryptographer, and the prophecy under Gideon Rises decodes to 4 other words. In another cryptogram from the episode Gideon Rises when decoded, the message reads, "The prophecy will be fulfilled." This cryptic line foreshadows the chaotic events of Season 2, when Bill Cipher, the series' main villain, rises to power. The prophecy will be fulfilled. The same prophecy the indigenous shaman tried to seal centuries earlier. The same prophecy McGucket scratched in code into his memory tapes. The same prophecy the Zodiac in the opening theme song was secretly the answer to. Every cryptogram pointed at the same circle, the same set of 10 symbols, the same arrangement that would, in the final episodes, become the only thing that could destroy Bill Cipher. But the most chilling cipher work in the show isn't even in the credits. It's a single backwards line spoken by a character. McGucket, in the memory canister flashback, isn't babbling nonsense. He's speaking in Atbash cipher, which replaces every letter with its mirror image in the alphabet. The other is from McGucket's memories, where he was speaking in an Atbash cipher. The translation is Bill Cipher Triangle, as you might have guessed. The man in the chair, the brilliant scientist whose mind was being eaten by the memory gun, was screaming the name of the demon in the only code he had left. And the only audience that heard him was the audience that bothered to write down his syllables on a notepad and reverse them with a chart. The town heard a crazy old man babbling. The fandom heard a desperate engineer, trying to leave a clue for whoever found his memories first. That's the design philosophy of this entire show. Every layer of it is built so that the surface works and the depth rewards. A casual viewer enjoys the cartoon. An obsessive viewer cracks open the codes and finds a different story underneath. And the codes don't lie. The codes don't troll. The codes are real foreshadowing. They are real warnings. They are real prophecies. The show treated the audience like collaborators, not like passive consumers. And here's the line that should hit you. After the series finale aired, the cryptogram at the end of Weirdmageddon 3, Take Back the Falls, was decoded. The final episode's credits had one last hidden phrase, the last message of the show, in code, written for the people who had been decoding messages for 2 seasons. For example, after decoding the message at the end of the series finale, Weirdmageddon 3, Take Back the Falls, fans uncovered the eerie statement, "Goodbye, Gravity Falls." Goodbye, Gravity Falls. 2 words, a farewell from the creator to the audience. He had been training to read his secret language for 2 years. The audience that did the work, the audience that decoded the credits, the audience that kept the show alive long after Disney moved on. And the goodbye was hidden, one last time, in a code only they could read. But the codes weren't the only thing Hirsch hid. There was a website, there was a hunt. There was a hunt. There was a real statue of Bill Cipher buried in a real forest, and Alex Hirsch made the entire global fandom of the show go find it. In the summer of 2016, after the show ended, Alex Hirsch posted a photograph on social media. The image shows Alex Hirsch in front of a statue of Bill Cipher, which he posted on social media and initiated the Cipher Hunt, where he scattered messages and hints in locations around the globe. Whoever finally locates the statue earns a prize. This hunt united fans around the world as they worked together to find and share hints online to solve the puzzle together. Read that again. A real physical statue of Bill Cipher, built out of stone, standing in a forest somewhere on planet Earth. And the creator of the show posted a picture of himself next to it as a riddle. The hunt was on. The clues were scattered across the world. A piece of a coded message in a library in Russia. A piece in a museum in Japan, a piece in a graveyard in New England. Fans flew across continents. Fans coordinated on Reddit threads. Fans translated languages they didn't speak so they could pass along the clues to the next group. A global treasure hunt for a triangular statue in the woods, organized by the creator of a cartoon, and the fandom solved it. The statue was found in a forest in Oregon. Reedsport, Oregon, in a state park where you could walk to it if you knew where to look. The first fan to reach it claimed the prize. The statue stayed in the forest. The state parks people, after some confusion, let it stay, and for a long time, anyone who wanted to could drive to Oregon and visit the corpse of Bill Cipher in the woods. Then, in 2017, the statue was stolen. Someone with a truck and bolt cutters drove out there, sawed Bill off his base, and took him. He hasn't been seen since. Somewhere in the world, in someone's backyard or basement or garage, is a stone statue of an interdimensional demon that was once the prize of the largest organized cartoon treasure hunt in television history. That's not a metaphor. That's not folklore. That's the real ending of the real Cipher hunt. The triangle escaped the woods. Now layer this on top of the show. In the finale, Bill Cipher is defeated. He is turned to stone. The last shot of his physical form in the cartoon is a statue of him in the forest. Outside of Gravity Falls, the same image Alex Hirsch built in the real world. The same image fans flew across continents to find. And then someone stole the real one. The fandom has opinions about what happened. Some of them think the thief was an obsessed fan who wanted the statue for themselves. Some of them think it was Hirsch staging the next phase of the hunt, and the next phase never came. Some of them, the people who like to lean into the weirdness, think that the statue was never meant to stay. That a statue of Bill Cipher in a forest was always going to disappear, because that is what statues of Bill Cipher do. And there's a website that fed into all of this. A real website, run by a real fan. The Mystery of Gravity Falls is a fan-made website dedicated to Gravity Falls. It contains various secrets and foreshadowing for the show, as well as a variety of tools to decode various codes in the show, and a catalog of currently solved riddles from the show. The site is run by a fan named Michael and is affiliated with the Mystery Shack online store. While not directly affiliated with Alex Hirsch and the crew of Gravity Falls, the webmaster, also known online as Gravity Falls Cipher, is described as a mysterious fella who is aware of all things online. A mysterious fella who is aware of all things online. The website served as a clearinghouse for the codes. Every time the credits rolled with a new cryptogram, fans would race to the website to post their decoded answer. The site became the unofficial second source for the show, and the webmaster, the so-called Michael, was treated by Alex Hirsch like a co-conspirator. Hirsch never confirmed or denied that he fed clues to the website. The fans noticed that the website seemed to know things the show hadn't aired yet. The website seemed to know what was coming. The website itself was a maze of hidden links. Users who are visiting the website with an ad blocker installed will see a banner with the following text instead of the banner ad. The hidden message below will reveal the secrets of Bill Cipher, MXVWNLG Gale QJ. Barex Wire NSG Gwevi Gay Deju Gay DW Hugh. The second line is encoded in the Caesar cipher, shifted 3 letters back, and decodes to "just kidding, you've blocked the ad that was here." Even the joke text on the website was encrypted. The trolling itself required you to decode it before you could be trolled. And there were more. The Konami code, the old video game cheat where you press a sequence of directional buttons, when entered on the website's keyboard, triggered a pop-up. Performing the Konami code with your keyboard, up, up, down, down, left, right, BA, enter, creates a pop-up reading, "The Royal Order of the Holy Mackerel congratulates you for coming this far. Now, get lost." The Royal Order of the Holy Mackerel, a fictional secret society inside the show, populated by Stan and his friends in the journals. And in the episode that introduces them, suddenly speaking to you through your real keyboard, congratulating you for coming this far, telling you to get lost. The line between the show and the real world had been getting thinner the entire time the show was on the air. The website blurred it. The cipher hunt erased it. Alex Hirsch was doing an experiment in transmedia storytelling that nobody had really tried before, and that nobody has really tried since. He was making the audience part of the universe. The kids decoding the cryptograms were not watching the show. They were doing the show. And the source code of the website itself, the HTML and the metadata that runs underneath what you see on screen, was full of more secrets. Hello, Gravity Falls fans. I'm glad you took time to look at the source. Good luck on finding all the hidden things I placed throughout the site. I will let you have 2 by browsing the rest of the source code below. The rest must be found on your own. The webmaster wrote a note inside the source code of his own website. A note that could only be found if you right-clicked, selected View Source, and read the HTML. A note that congratulated you for being weird enough to do that. A note that promised you more secrets if you kept digging. The numbers on the front page of the website, if you look closely, are coordinates. The numbers could quite possibly be coordinates for where Gravity Falls is located. The coordinates do indeed mark a place in Oregon. Real coordinates. They point to a real place in Oregon, not the place where the statue was found. A different place, a place that has never been publicly explained. A place fans have driven to, photographed, and left bewildered. There is a town in Oregon, according to the geography of the obsessives, that may have been the inspiration for Gravity Falls. A small town with a logging industry, a strange forest, and the same general layout as the cartoon. And the coordinates on the website point to a clearing somewhere near there. And if you go to that clearing, there's nothing in it. Just trees. Just wind. Just the silence of being in the actual place a cartoon told you to find. The fandom calls this the bleed-through, the point where the show stops being inside the screen and starts being inside the world. Every cartoon has a fandom. Not every cartoon has buried statues, scavenger hunts across countries, encrypted websites with coordinates, and an audience that travels to the real-world locations of fictional scenes. Gravity Falls did not just inspire a fandom. Gravity Falls drew its audience into the kind of obsessive relationship with media that conspiracy theorists have with real-world history, and the audience loved it. Because the audience knew, in some way, that they were being trusted, that the show thought they were smart enough to keep up, that the show would not have hidden a stone statue in a real forest. If it didn't expect its audience to be the kind of people who would find a stone statue in a real forest, that's the thing about Gravity Falls. It is a cartoon for children that was secretly an alternate reality game for adults, and every layer of it, from the credits to the website to the statue to the codes, is built on the assumption that you're paying attention. Most people aren't paying attention. Most people watched the show, laughed, and moved on. But the people who paid attention found that the show kept giving. The show is still giving. Even now, 10 years after it ended, fans are still decoding messages in the Book of Bill, still arguing about the meaning of the Zodiac, still trying to figure out where the real stone statue went, after it was stolen out of the Oregon woods. And while we're talking about Bill, we have to talk about the worst thing he ever did to a character in the show. The moment when the line between Dipper and Bill got thin enough for Bill to walk across. The episode where a child possessed by a demon stood in front of a window and decided whether or not to throw the child's body off a water tower. We're going to sock opera. And we're going to see what Bill actually plans to do with a human body when he finally gets one. The Day Bill Took a Child's Body Sock Opera aired in September of 2014. It was the 4th episode of Season 2. On the surface, it's a comedy about a puppet show. Mabel has a crush on a child puppeteer named Gabe Benson. She wants to put on a massive show to impress him. She drags Dipper into helping her build sock puppets. The episode promises hijinks, sibling squabbles, and a musical number. What it actually delivers is the moment Bill Cipher possesses a child's body for the first time and uses it to commit slow self-harm in front of the camera. Dipper is trying to crack the password on a laptop he found in the bunker. The laptop, the fandom suspects, contains the identity of the author of the journals. He has been at the laptop for days. He hasn't slept. He's losing his mind. While Dipper is sleep-deprived and probably not entirely thinking straight, the laptop runs out of password attempts and threatens to wipe its own data. Dipper is one input away from losing everything. That's when Bill shows up. He has been waiting for this exact moment. He has been waiting for a child to be too tired, too desperate, too close to the answer to think clearly. Bill offers a deal. He'll give Dipper a hint to the password. In exchange, Dipper has to give Bill a puppet. Any puppet. Dipper looks at the sock puppets Mabel has been building, shrugs, and agrees. He picks one. He shakes Bill's hand. The deal closes. As they shake hands closing the deal, Dipper asks Bill which puppet he wanted. Bill mockingly ponders his answer before turning on Dipper and takes possession of his body and kicking Dipper's consciousness out. Dipper, now in a ghost-like form, is shocked as Bill stomps on the laptop, smashing it to pieces. He reveals that Dipper was the puppet he wanted, and that Dipper had come way too close to figuring out some major answers and wanted Dipper out of the way. Stop on that for a moment. Bill has been planning this for episodes. Bill has been letting Dipper get close to the answer, watching him sweat at the laptop, watching him refuse to sleep, watching him grow exactly weak enough to make a deal he wouldn't otherwise make. And then, at the precise moment of maximum desperation, Bill takes the body of a 12-year-old boy. The puppet was always Dipper. The puppet was always the kid. What Bill does in the body is the part fans never quite shake. He stomps on the laptop. He destroys the data Dipper has been bleeding to access. He then starts experimenting. Bill laughingly trying human things. As he experiments with Dipper's body, harming it in several ways, they end up in the kitchen. He stabs Dipper's hand with a fork. He shoves cutlery into his arm. Bill used Dipper's own body to test physical limits through self-harm, such as walking downstairs backwards and stabbing himself with cutlery. He walks down the stairs backwards. Picture that. A demon inside a child's body deliberately walking down a flight of stairs the wrong way, just to see how the muscles fail, just to see what breaks. It's funny to watch him standing there cheerfully in Dipper's body with forks sticking out of his arms, but it's also disturbing to know that he has possessed the body of a child and is unflinchingly willing to let Dipper's body get beaten up. The show plays it for comedy. The show needs to play it for comedy because the alternative is unwatchable. Bill is grinning the whole time. Bill is laughing the whole time. Bill is treating Dipper's body the way a toddler treats a toy he doesn't own. With curiosity, with disregard, with no understanding that the toy will not be repaired when it breaks. And the kids who watched this episode at home laughed too, because the show framed it as funny. The show needed it framed as funny because the show was on a children's network. But the parents in the room, if there were any parents in the room, would have caught the layer underneath. The layer where a foreign consciousness is inside a child's body, doing things the child cannot consent to. The layer where the only word for what Bill is doing is the word the show was not allowed to say. Then there's the part the show puts in writing and the audience really didn't see coming. Bill leaves a note. He writes it down. He writes down what he is actually planning to do once he's finished playing with Dipper's body. Bill also left a note behind for Mabel to find, saying that his ultimate plan was to throw Dipper's body off the water tower and trap him forever in the mindscape. The water tower. The plan was to climb the water tower, to stand at the top, to throw the body of a 12-year-old boy off the side, and to trap the soul of that boy in the dream space forever, screaming while his body broke on the concrete below. That is the actual plan. That is on the page. That is the note. The show put it in a piece of paper for Mabel to find as a piece of comic relief, and the fandom has been chewing on the implications ever since. Bill was going to murder Dipper. Bill was going to murder Dipper in a way that left the corpse for Mabel to find. Bill was going to take the brother of the kid he was hurting and leave her at the foot of the tower with the body. And then he was going to keep Dipper, alive but disembodied, in the mindscape where Bill rules forever. That's not a children's show plot. That's a horror movie plot wearing a children's show costume. There's another detail in this episode that should make your skin tighten. For the record, Dipper's hands are apparently icy cold, leading Mabel to wonder if Dipper's body is dead while Bill is possessing it. Dipper's hands are cold to the touch while Bill is in the body. Mabel notices it when she shakes hands with what she thinks is her brother. The body is cold. The skin is the wrong temperature. The blood is not circulating the way it should. The implication, never spoken out loud, is that the body is functionally a corpse while Bill is driving it. The boy you're watching on screen has died, in some technical sense, for the duration of the possession. Bill is operating a meat puppet that is no longer maintaining its own life signs. Now think about what Mabel had to deal with in this episode. Her brother walked into the room. She knew almost immediately that her brother was wrong. The eyes were wrong, the voice was wrong, the hands were cold. Viewers additionally get to sit through Bill's attempts to pass himself off as Dipper in a not-so-convincing way, while learning about the telltale sign of when a human is possessed by Bill, their pupils. The pupils? Mabel figured out that Bill was inside her brother by looking at his pupils. The triangle eye, even hidden behind a human iris, leaves a mark. The pupils go strange. The pupils go cat-like. The pupils give it away. How many other times in the show, in the background, in single frames, has a character's pupils gone strange and the audience missed it? The fandom has gone through the series frame by frame, looking. There are moments. There are flashes. Stan, in certain shots, has eyes that don't look quite right. Ford, in flashback sequences, has eyes that don't look quite right. The show never confirms it. The show never denies it. The triangle, once inside a body, leaves a residue. And the audience that learned the residue symptom in sock opera spent the rest of the show looking for it in everyone. Mabel ends the possession by setting off the fireworks during her puppet show. Even though Bill is an energy being, he's still in the body of a kid who hasn't slept in days. Exhaustion forces Bill out, allowing Dipper to retake his body. Possessing Dipper's puppet, Bill gloats that big things are coming. Mabel removes Bill entirely by using the Big Finish, a fireworks display that destroys every puppet and parts of the theater. The body Bill was riding was exhausted, the kid hadn't slept, the vehicle gave out under him. Mabel destroyed his puppet escape route with literal fire. Dipper got his body back, but here's the line Bill leaves the episode with: big things are coming. He gloats it through a puppet mouth, possessed for one final beat, before Mabel torches him. Big things are coming. The show is telling you, again in the open this time, that the demon you just barely survived has bigger plans. The water tower was not the plan. The water tower was a side project. The plan is something the demon hasn't even started on yet. And the fandom over the years has dug into one specific question about this episode. The deal Bill made with Dipper. Did Bill ever close it out? Naturally, Bill screws him over, not fulfilling his end of the deal. Word of God says that Bill still owes Dipper a favor but is not to be trusted. Alex Hirsch confirmed after the fact that Bill never gave Dipper the hint he promised. The deal was a fraud. Bill took the puppet without paying for it. And in the strange demonic accounting of the multiverse, that means Bill still owes Dipper a favor from Bill Cipher, an unpaid debt from a creature who destroyed his own dimension and waited 1 trillion years to find a door. The fandom has theorized for years about what that unpaid favor could mean. Some of them think it played a role in the finale, in the moment when the Pines almost lose and then don't. Some of them think the favor is still out there, sitting in some cosmic ledger, waiting to be called in by a Dipper who is now an adult. The Book of Bill never resolved it. The show never resolved it. There is still an open IOU between a triangle and a teenager, and neither of them are likely to forget it. Now there is one more disturbing thing in the sock opera episode that the casual viewer would never catch. Speaking of Stanford, it is amusing that many of the Dark Dipper theories weren't that far off when it came to predicting the author's relationship with Bill. Ford was successfully seduced by Bill's flattery, his pride and search for recognition, causing him to eventually shut out his only relationships and almost doom the world. Before Ford was even confirmed, this episode had twin theorists fired up with that dumb siblings line, which suggests that Bill definitely rifled around in Ford's past. Maybe literally, if that time travel theory holds any water. We'll come to that. Nice foreshadowing on how Bill drinks their show. I also have to wonder about the 2 eyes comment. But of course, Bill's probably possessed quite a few bodies, even if Ford was the last. The line Bill drops at Mabel during the puppet show. The line about siblings. Who would sacrifice everything they've worked for just for their dumb sibling? It's a line meant to manipulate Mabel into not interrupting Bill's possession. But it's also a line that in retrospect only makes sense if Bill has rifled through Ford's memories. Because Ford and Stan had exactly that kind of fight. Ford sacrificed his relationship with his brother for his work. Ford regretted it for decades. Ford is the original dumb sibling in the line Bill is now using on the next generation. Bill has been inside Ford's head. He knows Ford's regrets. He knows Ford's wounds. And he's using Ford's wounds repackaged into a one-liner against Ford's grandniece 30 years later. That's not improvisation, that's evidence. The triangle keeps notes. The triangle keeps everything he learns from every mind he possesses, and he deploys it on the next mind he meets. How many minds has Bill been in over 1 trillion years? The fandom has tried to count. The Book of Bill suggests dozens of named historical figures had triangle deals. Some of them led to scientific breakthroughs. Some of them led to wars. Some of them led to founding fathers and presidents and conquistadors and pharaohs. Every brilliant or terrible thing in human history could, by the book's loose hints, have had Bill's fingerprints on it somewhere. That is the texture of the threat Bill represents. Not a single villain, a historical force, a pattern of possessions running through human civilization for thousands of years. And in 2012, in a small town in Oregon, the pattern landed on a 12-year-old boy at a laptop. The other thing sock opera quietly teaches you is what Bill does when he's bored. He gets drunk, he plays, he breaks toys. He makes deals he never intends to honor. He is not a strategic god. He is a chaos god. He is older than nations, and he behaves like a child. Because in some flat dimension 1,200 billion years ago, he was a child, and the trauma of what he did froze him in that childhood forever. That's the saddest interpretation of Bill. And it's the one the Book of Bill ultimately points at. The Triangle is a kid who killed his parents and his world by accident, and the entire trillion-year reign of terror that followed is just one extended tantrum. But the tantrum was almost successful. The tantrum almost ended the world. The next chunk is the one where we have to talk about the moment Bill actually got out, where the rift in reality tore open above Gravity Falls, and the sky filled with shapes the human eye was not built to process. The moment the cartoon stopped being a cartoon, we're going into Weirdmageddon. There's a moment in the last act of Season 2 where Gravity Falls stops being a cartoon. The animation style stays the same. The voice actors stay the same. The Disney logo still appears at the end of every credit roll. But the show that is happening inside that frame is no longer a show for children. It's something else. It's the closest thing American animation has ever produced to a televised apocalypse. The moment begins with a deal Mabel makes Mabel. The bright one, the trusting one, the one who has spent 2 seasons painting hearts on everything and singing about boy bands, accidentally hands the rift in reality to Bill Cipher. She's tricked into it by Bill in disguise. She doesn't know what she's giving him. She thinks she's doing a favor for a friend. Bill's possession of Blendin Blandin in order to ignite the start of Weirdmageddon will certainly go down in TV history as one of the most jaw-dropping moments ever. It certainly had 14-year-old me in a chokehold. Before this moment, the audience clearly knew of Bill's villainous nature and his plans to take over this dimension. However, he still could have been passed off as relatively silly and unserious, or at least as not having too much of a fighting chance against the Pines family. However, tricking Mabel, the most trusting character of the show, into handing over the rift, just scraped the surface of the lengths he was willing to go to secure what he wanted. That's the line Bill possessed. Blendin Blandin, the time traveler. He wore Blendin's face. He walked up to Mabel in a moment of pure emotional vulnerability, when she was sobbing in the woods because the summer she loved was about to end, and he comforted her. He told her she could keep summer forever. All she had to do was hand him a small object she had been carrying. She did it. She handed over the rift. The rift cracked open in his hands, and the door Bill had been knocking on for 1 trillion years finally swung wide. What happened next is, in the Weirdmageddon Part 1 episode and the 2 episodes that follow it, the sky above Gravity Falls cracked. Not metaphorically. The animation drew an actual crack across the sky, like a windshield hit by a rock, and the crack spread until the entire dome of the heavens looked like broken glass. And then through the broken glass came shapes. Not creatures, shapes. Geometric forms with too many sides, and not enough sides. Living equations. Things the human nervous system was not designed to look at without going into shock. Bill's old court from the nightmare realm. 1 trillion years of stockpiled minions came pouring through the rift, like a wasp's nest tipped over a city, and Bill himself, the Triangle, finally walked the earth. His first act on Earth, his first physical step into the dimension he had spent 1 trillion years trying to reach, was to laugh. A long, slow, satisfied laugh. The kind of laugh you laugh when you've waited for something so long that the waiting itself became a kind of religion. Bill walked out of the rift into the open air of Gravity Falls, and he laughed the laugh of a man whose God finally answered him. What he did next is the part the fandom remembers in pieces. because the show fired so many images at the audience in so few minutes that the brain can't hold all of them at once. He turned the mayor of Gravity Falls into a screaming bag of eyes. He turned a high school football coach into a flesh and bone gymnasium. He took the police chief and the deputies and stretched them into a column of mouths that stretched up into the sky. He took ordinary people, neighbors, shopkeepers, school teachers, and he reshaped them into furniture for his court. And he froze a man into a gold statue and used him as a chair. The man in the chair was Time Baby. The Time Baby, the giant infant god of chronology, who had been a recurring authority figure in the show. Bill killed Time Baby, the literal manifestation of time itself. The being who policed the timelines and enforced the laws of causality was reduced to a frozen ornament in Bill's throne room within the first hour of the apocalypse. After a deal with Time Baby falls apart, Bill sends him crashing into Earth where he is frozen. If Bill can kill time, the show is telling you the rules you have been watching the show under no longer apply. There is no clock. There is no future or past. There is only the duration of Bill's tantrum, and Bill's tantrum has now consumed the entire town. But here is where the show pulled a punch that has been making fans uncomfortable for 10 years. Bill could not leave Gravity Falls. The same shaman's curse that had banished him from the valley centuries earlier was still in effect. After finding out what Bill truly was, he burned the portal and banned Bill from the valley with a curse and prophecy. The borders of Gravity Falls were sealed. There was a dome of energy around the town. Bill could do anything he wanted inside the dome. He could turn the dome into hell. He could, and he did. But he could not step past the dome. That is the only reason the world survived. A shaman in animal hides, centuries before any of this, drew a circle around a small Oregon town and said the words and burned the materials and locked the door against an interdimensional demon who would otherwise have eaten the entire planet. The Pines family did not save the world. The Pines family saved a town. The shaman saved the world. The show never gives that shaman a name. The Book of Bill never gives him a name. He is one of the most important figures in the history of the Gravity Falls universe, and he exists in the canon as a piece of nameless background folklore. The fandom has built him into a hero in their own writing. Fan fiction has named him a dozen times. The show is silent about him. Now, what Bill did to the people inside the dome is the part that ages with you. You watch this episode at 12 and you laugh at the absurd shapes. You watch it at 25 and you realize what the absurd shapes are doing. Bill transforms into a horrifying version of himself to chase after Mabel and Dipper. One of Bill's scariest moments comes in S2E20, Weirdmageddon 3, Take Back the Falls. When he chases after Dipper and Mabel in a horrifying form, Bill grows into a giant form. His single eye becomes a wound the size of a building. His mouth becomes a row of teeth that extend down into the floor. He chases the children. The children, who at this point have survived everything the show has thrown at them, are running for their lives from a god who has personally chosen them as prey. And in the middle of all this, Bill is also doing something quieter. He is torturing Ford. Ford and Bill's relationship was more genuine than previously shown. Of course, with Bill still being a morally bankrupt interdimensional overlord, he escalates his methods of persuasion to physical and psychological torture. From possessing his body, to stand on the roof in the freezing cold winter, to making Ford forget his own name. Bill gets intense. Read that. Bill possesses Ford's body. He uses Ford's own hands to stand Ford on the roof of a building in the freezing cold winter. He makes Ford watch through his own eyes as his body suffers in temperatures that should kill a man. He makes Ford forget his own name, the man with 6 fingers. The brilliant scientist who spent 30 years surviving alternate dimensions sits in a chair in front of his old friend, and the old friend pulls his memories apart, and the old friend makes him forget who he is. The show frames this as the moment when Bill's mask finally drops. There's no friendship. There never was. The trillion-year loneliness that drove Bill to seek out Ford was not the loneliness of a being looking for company. It was the loneliness of a parasite looking for a host. The flattery was bait, the dream visits were bait, the intellectual conversations were bait. And now that Bill has Ford in his physical hands, the bait is gone, and what's left is a god slowly disassembling a man. because the man knows things the god wants. There's something fans have argued about endlessly. The Book of Bill made it more complicated, not less. However, he still acts every bit the heartbroken ex. He goes to a bar in the rock-bottom asteroid belt of the Vicious Spiral Nebula, gets wildly drunk, banking on the adult audience of the show to make the joke land, and gets arrested for creating a scene at a Mexican restaurant. There he asks for 1 sixer please, his nickname for Ford, and when denied, starts crying and destroying the place. The book gives us a flashback that the show could not. Bill, after Ford rejected him, after Ford put the metal plate in his head and banned Bill from his mind, went on a cosmic bender. He flew across the galaxy to a bar in an asteroid belt and got drunker than a god should ever get. He ordered drinks in Ford's nickname. He cried in front of the bartender. He smashed the bar apart when they refused to keep serving him. He got arrested by whatever passes for police in the rock-bottom asteroid belt of the Vicious Spiral Nebula. The interpretation the fandom has settled on is uncomfortable. Bill's torture of Ford during Weirdmageddon is not just sadism, it's revenge. Bill, in his demented way, loved Ford, or what passes for love in something that destroyed its own home dimension. And Ford, by escaping him, by hiding from him, by putting metal in his own skull to lock Bill out, broke the only relationship the Triangle had ever managed to build in 1 trillion years of trying. The torture is what a heartbroken god does to the ex who left him. That is in the Book of Bill. Alex Hirsch wrote it, the fandom is still processing it, and in the middle of all this, the Pines have to figure out how to stop him. They build a zodiac. They draw it on the floor of the abandoned bunker. They gather the 10 people whose symbols are on it, the shooting star, the pine tree, the fish skeleton, the question mark, the 6-fingered hand, the ice bag, the heart, the glasses, the llama, the crescent. Each symbol is a person. Each person stands in their spot on the circle and holds the hands of the 2 people next to them. The Zodiac will trap Bill. The Zodiac is the prophecy, and the Zodiac fails because 2 of the people on the circle hate each other too much to hold hands. Stan and Ford, the brothers who have been fighting for 30 years. The brothers whose argument knocked Ford into a different dimension in the first place. The brothers who in this exact second, with the world ending around them, can't put aside their old fight long enough to save the planet. Bill watches them fail. Bill laughs. Bill kills the Zodiac with a single gesture. He picks up the symbols. He crushes them in his hand. He turns the Pines family's last hope into dust in the middle of a circle of stones. And that was supposed to be it. That was supposed to be the end. The prophecy was the only weapon. The prophecy failed. There was no plan B. But there was a plan B. The plan B was the saddest plan the show has ever asked an audience to sit through. The plan B was Stan agreeing to die. This is the part of the show that breaks the people who grew up with it. Even now, 10 years later, you will see Gravity Falls fans on the internet write paragraphs about the last 15 minutes of Weirdmageddon 3. Take back the falls. And somewhere in those paragraphs, they will mention crying. The plan came from Ford. The only way to kill Bill Cipher, given that the Zodiac was destroyed, was to trick him into possessing a body and then erase the mind of the body while Bill was still inside it. If Bill possesses a body and the body's mind is destroyed, Bill has nowhere to retreat to. Bill becomes a passenger trapped in a vehicle whose driver has been deleted. Bill dies with the host. The plan was for Ford to be the host. Ford had the metal plate in his head, sure, but that could be removed in a moment. Ford would let Bill take his body. The McGucket memory gun, the same gun that had created the Society of the Blind Eye, would be turned on Ford's own brain. Ford would die. His mind would be wiped clean. Bill, trapped inside, would die with him. That was the plan. Ford was ready. Ford had been ready for 30 years. Ford had spent 3 decades in the nightmare realm dreaming of the moment he could finally kill the Triangle, and he was willing to die in the process if that was the cost. Then Stan came up with something. Bill, in his arrogance, would not trust Ford. Ford had betrayed him before. Ford had hidden from him. Bill would never possess Ford willingly because Bill knew Ford too well. Bill would see the trap. But Stan was the brother nobody respected. Stan was the con man. Stan was the failure. Stan was, in Bill's view, beneath notice. If Stan and Ford swapped clothes, swapped fezzes, swapped the entire identity they had built around themselves over the decades, Bill would possess the wrong brother. Bill would think he was inside Ford. He would be inside Stan. And when the gun fired, it would be Stan's memory that died. Stan said yes. Stan, who had spent 30 years lying about who he was, took off his brother's clothes and put on his own clothes for the first time in 3 decades, and then put on his brother's clothes one more time as a trick. The con man ran one last con. The con was to die. Bill fell for it. Bill walked into Stan's body laughing at the easy victory. And the moment Bill was inside, Ford pulled the trigger, the McGucket memory gun lit up. The light flooded the inside of Stan's head. The episode concludes with the erasure of Stan's memory to destroy Bill, followed by a bittersweet departure as summer ends. It provides a definitive and emotional conclusion to every major character arc in the series. Bill screamed. He screamed in a way that the animators had not let him scream before. The Triangle, the Lord of Nightmares, the destroyer of his own dimension, the demon who had waited 1 trillion years to escape, the god who had killed Time Baby, screamed like a child who realizes he is lost. Death Cry Echo lets out one when Stan finally destroys him completely. The scream became a death echo. The Triangle's body broke apart. His shape, the geometric perfection that had been the symbol of the show, fractured. He stretched. He distorted. He filled the frame of Stan's mind with one last attempt to claw out, and the memory gun kept firing, and the inside of Stan's head kept emptying, and Bill went with it. He died inside the head of the brother of the man he thought he was killing. That was the moment Gravity Falls won. But Stan was gone too. The man who came out of the chair was not Grunkle Stan. He was a body in Stan's clothes. He looked at his great-niece and great-nephew with no recognition. He looked at his brother with no recognition. He looked at the Mystery Shack, the building he had built and maintained for 30 years with the same blank face he had been wearing since the gun fired. His mind was clean. Bill was gone. Stan was gone too. The episode does not let you stay in that grief for long. Mabel runs to him. Mabel hugs him. Mabel starts showing him things. Photos, sweaters, memories, the piggy, the fez, the names. And, slowly, in a sequence that the fandom still cannot rewatch without losing it, Stan starts coming back. Mabel's voice, Mabel's love, Mabel's refusal to let her Grunkle stay erased pulls the memory back into the empty head. Bill cannot survive in there, but Stan's love for his family can. The Triangle could be erased, but the bond could not. That is the ending. That is the secret thesis of the entire show. Bill spent 1 trillion years building intellect, power, manipulation, scheme. The Pines spent 1 summer building love. And love survived the memory gun and intellect did not. You can call that sappy. The fans don't. The fans treat that ending as scripture. Now here's the thing. The Book of Bill came out years later. And the Book of Bill, in its closing chapters, revealed something that the show had only hinted at. Bill Cipher survived Weird Mageddon with the help of the Axolotl. He survived. The Axolotl, a mysterious pink amphibian god from another dimension that had been referenced in the show only in a single backwards spoken line, made a deal with Bill in his final moment. The deal saved his soul. The deal took him out of Stan's head and put him somewhere else. He's not gone. He's never been gone. The cartoon defeated him. The Book of Bill brought him back. We're going to talk next about where Bill went. We're going to talk about the Theraprism. We're going to talk about the Axolotl. And we're going to talk about whether the ending of Gravity Falls was ever an ending at all. The Pink Frog God and the deal that saved him. The Axolotl is the strangest thing in the Gravity Falls universe, and the show almost never showed you. The first mention of it was so quiet that fans missed it for a long time. It was a line spoken backwards in a poem that the journals contained. A poem about a pink amphibian god from a higher dimension, a creature so far above Bill in the cosmic hierarchy that Bill, the destroyer of his own home dimension, was afraid of it. The line, when reversed, was about a final escape. The line was a kind of prayer. Bill would say at the moment of his own death, 60 degrees that come in threes, watches from within birch trees, saw his own dimension burn, misses home and can't return. Says he's happy, he's a liar. Blame the arson for the fire. If he wants to shirk the blame, he'll have to invoke my name. One way to absolve his crime. A different form, a different time. That last line is the spell. The triangle, if he ever found himself dying, could invoke the axolotl's name, and the axolotl, in its mercy, would let him be reborn. A different form, a different time, a second life, somewhere else, someone else. Given to a god by a higher god as a kind of cosmic parole. The show ended with Bill screaming inside Stan's head. The credits rolled, the audience cried. The fandom thought it was over. It wasn't over. Bill Cipher survived Weirdmageddon with the help of the axolotl. The Book of Bill, 10 years after the finale, confirmed what the fandom had been whispering for a decade. At the last second, in the last moment before the memory gun finished its work, Bill spoke the axolotl's name. The axolotl heard. The axolotl took him. Bill's body died. Bill's mind, the consciousness that had been the central villain of Gravity Falls, slipped through the back door of reality and into the axolotl's keeping. And where the axolotl put him is the second thing the Book of Bill finally answered. Even though Bill seems all-powerful, he is sent to the neutral zone in Dimension 5150 after striking a deal with the axolotl, a powerful extra-dimensional creature. Also referred to as the Theraprism, Bill's rehabilitation center is located outside of space and time, which feels appropriate to me given his dimension-hopping ways. The Theraprism, a rehabilitation center for fallen gods. A facility located outside of space and time in a dimension numbered 5150. Alex Hirsch put a psychiatric hold reference in the dimension number. The triangle who killed his own world was committed to interdimensional involuntary therapy. Read the description of the Theraprism slowly. It is a facility. It has staff. It has rules. Bill is one of many fallen interdimensional entities being held for rehabilitation by a higher dimensional bureaucracy that the show never let us see. There is a structure above Bill. There is a system that catches creatures like Bill when they finish their tantrums. There has been, the whole time, the universe Gravity Falls exists in has a layer of cosmic janitors who clean up after gods, and Bill has been swept into a holding cell in their facility. And the Book of Bill makes one thing clear. The big takeaway from Bill's stint in the Theraprism is that the demon has no desire to change. According to the Book of Bill, the terrifying demon has been sent to a neutral zone in Dimension 5150. Bill is not getting better. The therapy isn't working. The yellow triangle who killed his own family and took 1 trillion years to find a door to ours is sitting in a chair in a facility outside of time, being asked to talk about his feelings, and he is lying to the therapist. He is lying the way he always lied. He is biding his time. He is waiting. That is the ending the show pretended it had. That is the ending the Book of Bill gave you instead. The triangle is not dead. The triangle is a patient, and the patient is going to escape. There's a section in the Book of Bill that is genuinely the strangest thing Alex Hirsch has ever written. It's a sequence of pages where Bill, from inside the Theraprism, addresses the reader directly. He flirts with the reader. He tries to make a deal with the reader. He asks the reader to do small things, to draw a triangle on a piece of paper, to say his name 3 times, to agree to a contract written in a font that the reader cannot quite read. His sinister effects on human history, the Pines family's most embarrassing secrets, and the key to overthrowing the world laid out in a handy step-by-step guide. This chaotic and beautifully illustrated tome contains baffling riddles, uncrackable ciphers, Lost Journal 3 pages, ways to cheat death, the meaning of life, and a whole chapter on silly straws. But most importantly, the Book of Bill is deeply, deeply cursed. Alex Hirsch, one New York Times bestselling author, resuscitates this infamous villain and invites fans to a Bill's eye view of the Gravity Falls universe. There are many who believe this book is too dangerous for human hands. But if you can't resist, beware. Once you make a deal with Bill, it's not so easily undone. Once you make a deal with Bill, it's not so easily undone. That's the publisher's official summary. That is on the back of a book that is sitting in millions of homes around the world. Alex Hirsch wrote a book in which the antagonist of his cartoon directly tries to manipulate the reader into agreeing to a contract and then put that book on shelves in bookstores everywhere and let children buy it. The Book of Bill is, in the most literal sense, a haunted object. Not because it's supernatural, because the audience treats it like it is. There are people who refuse to read certain pages. There are people who refuse to say Bill's name out loud while holding the book. There are people who keep the book turned face down on their nightstand because they don't want the eye on the cover staring at them while they sleep. The fandom has produced its own rituals around this object, and the rituals are not entirely tongue-in-cheek. That is what Alex Hirsch built. He built a cartoon that trained its audience to treat decoded messages as real warnings, and then he published a book that addresses those audience members directly and asks them to make a deal with the demon they spent 2 seasons learning to fear. The bleed-through that started with the cipher hunt did not end. It got worse, it got more intimate, and the book contains real Easter eggs, real ciphers, real secrets that the show never told you. For starters, even though Ford is Bill's puppet, the paranormal investigator writes down pages in his journal only to tear them out, and that leads the Book of Bill to delve into the content of Journal 3's missing pages. The lost pages of Journal 3, the pages Ford tore out because he could not bear to keep what he had written in them. What was in those pages? Things Ford did under Bill's influence that he was too ashamed to keep on the record. Conversations between Ford and Bill that read in hindsight, like the journal of a person being groomed by a charismatic abuser. Diagrams Ford drew for machines he no longer remembers building. References to a deal Ford made with Bill in the early days that he tore out of his own memory. There's a chapter in the Book of Bill about the Pines family's most embarrassing secrets. Bill, in his unreliable narration, takes the reader on a tour of every humiliation, regret, and hidden moment in the lives of Stan, Ford, Dipper, and Mabel that he could find. Some of it is comedy. The line between Bill's lies and the show's truth has been blurred so far in this book that you can't always tell which is which, and that ambiguity is the point. Bill is an unreliable narrator. Bill is also occasionally telling you things the cartoon never could. And then there are the parallel universes. The Blind Eye Society was referenced in the Book of Bill in the Parallel Universe section with a Blind Eye, Mabel, and Dipper. It is currently unknown why they joined in that universe. In one alternate dimension, in one variation of the multiverse, Mabel and Dipper Pines grew up to join the Society of the Blind Eye. The kids who broke the society in the main timeline became the new hooded leaders of it in another. Why? The book doesn't say. The fans have been chewing on it for a year. The simplest theory is that in that universe, the kids saw something so bad they decided to forget. That something in Gravity Falls was worse than what was on screen. In our timeline, and the Pines twins faced with it, did what McGucket had done. They erased themselves. The Parallel Universe section of the book is short. It teases more than it explains. There is a Blind Eye Mabel. There is a Stan with a different fate. There is a Ford who never met Bill. There is, in one disturbing single-panel reference, a mystery shack that is a real murder hut, not a tourist trap. Opened the Murder Hut, later renamed the Mystery Shack. That name keeps coming back. Stan, in the original timeline, almost called the shack the Murder Hut before he renamed it. The original sign, the failed branding, is buried in the early lore of the show. In one parallel universe, the rename never happened. In one parallel universe, Stan ran a murder hut. The implications are left dangling. The Book of Bill is a book of dangling implications. That's its function. Alex Hirsch finished the cartoon with a clean ending. The Book of Bill came along and put a question mark on every clean ending. Stan got his memory back. Did he get all of it back? Bill died. Did he really die? Or did the axolotl take him? The Pines twins went home for the school year. Did they really leave Gravity Falls behind, or are they still going to get pulled back in? The book doesn't answer. The book asks. And the asking is the new canon. What the show never said out loud. There are theories the fandom has been holding on to for years, that the show never confirmed and the book never resolved. These are the secrets that don't have answers. These are the parts of Gravity Falls that live in the speculative space the show deliberately left open. The first one is Mabel. It sounds absurd at first. Mabel is the bright one. Mabel is the sunshine. Mabel sings about boy bands and wears sweaters with cats on them. But fans have been picking apart Mabel for a decade, and the picking has gotten dark. And here we are with one of the darkest, mysterious people in Gravity Falls, Mabel Pines. The sinister, manipulating the most horrifying person who is either good and acts suspicious, or has a sinister plan and wants to hide her secrets no matter what. Read that. That is a real theory. From a real Gravity Falls forum, treating Mabel as the secret villain of the show. It sounds insane. Then you go back and you watch the pilot, and you watch the episodes the theorists point to, and you start to see what they see. In the first episode of the show, when the kids fight the gnomes, Dipper asks her about it. She makes a non-committal hum and changes the subject. She keeps gnome hair in episode 1 and doesn't say why, but suspiciously says, hum. A child who fought a swarm of magical creatures keeps a hair as a trophy and refuses to explain. That's small. That's almost nothing. Then it happens again. In the second episode, when the boat capsizes and Dipper's camera falls into the lake, Mabel says the same non-committal hum. At the end of Season 1, Episode 2, Dipper's disposable camera falls to the lake when Gobblewonker hits their boat. When Dipper asks what it was, Mabel just says, hum. Then there's the pelican joke, the same episode. Mabel does an impression of a pelican, and the punchline of the joke ends with the word Bill. At the end of Season 1, Episode 2, Mabel tells a joke while talking as a pelican. Her joke ended like this. Because he had a very big bill, she just said Bill, exactly like how Bill Cipher calls himself. The pronunciation. The fans point to the pronunciation, the way Mabel says the word Bill. A die-hard fan watching the episode for the 30th time noticed, and once they noticed, they couldn't unnotice it. Is Mabel possessed? Is Mabel a vessel? Is Mabel in some parallel timeline like the blind eye Mabel of the book? Secretly working for Bill? Probably not. The show treats Mabel as a hero. The Book of Bill treats Mabel as a hero. The interpretation that survives is that Mabel is just a child. But the theory exists. The theory has been alive in the community for a decade. And the fact that it can survive at all is a testament to how dense the show is with potential meaning. A pelican joke in Episode 2 has been the subject of forum posts for 10 years. That is what Gravity Falls did to its audience. The second theory is about Stan having a twin. The most famous theory in the show's history. It posited that Grunkle Stan had a secret twin brother who was the true author of the journals. Evidence for animation inconsistencies in the deep end. The mystery of the llama symbol on the cipher wheel. Evidence against official confirmation that the llama represents Pacifica. Hirsch's direct dismissal of the theory in interviews. This one turned out to be correct. The fans called it. The fans called it in Season 1, based on animation inconsistencies that should not have been visible to anyone who wasn't watching the show frame by frame. In the episode The Deep End, there were single frames where Stan's appearance was slightly off. A different shadow, a different posture, a different age line. The theorists pointed at the frames. The theorists said, that is not Stan in those frames. That is someone who looks like Stan but isn't. They were right. The show eventually confirmed that the man in those frames was, in fact, the secret twin brother Ford. In single animation frames a year before he wrote the reveal episode, the fandom caught it from frames. From individual stills, the human eye should not be able to register. That is the relationship the audience has with this show. They have trained themselves to watch animation at a level of detail the animation was rendered in. They are looking at the show the way the animators looked at the show, and the animators rewarded them for it. They were the actual lore. The third one is Toby Determined. Toby is the local journalist, a sad sack character who appears in the background of many episodes, generally being humiliated. A minor but persistent theory suggested that the pathetic journalist Toby Determined had a secret, cooler alter ego. This was based on throwaway lines about his desire to be respected. In the finale, it is confirmed that Toby adopts the persona of Bodacious T, a punk rocker warrior, during the events of Weirdmageddon, finally fulfilling his dream of being cool. He became Bodacious T during the apocalypse. He fought monsters. He finally became cool. The fandom caught the throwaway lines about his hidden side, and the show paid off the throwaway lines in the finale. The fourth one, and the deepest one, is the question that the Book of Bill almost answered, but didn't quite. The theory suggests Bill is not dead, but undergoing a forced reincarnation to atone for his crimes. Alex Hirsch has hinted that Bill's soul exists in a different space than his physical form. The reincarnation theory. The idea that Bill is not in the Theraprism doing time. The idea that Bill is being recycled. That the Axolotl, the higher god, made a deal with Bill. Maybe a baby in a hospital somewhere, with no memory of who he was, but with the soul of a triangle inside him. Alex Hirsch has hinted at this. Not confirmed, hinted, in interviews, in the way he wrote certain Book of Bill chapters. In the way the book ends with Bill not in a coffin, but in a chair. There is a child who is also a god. There is a kid who has Bill Cipher's soul without knowing it. There is a person walking around who will at some point wake up to memories that don't fit them. And the wakening might happen in 20 years, or 50, or 100. The cosmic timeline of a forced reincarnation has no deadline. The fandom has run with this. The fan fiction community has thousands of stories built around the reincarnation theory. There are stories where the reincarnated Bill is Dipper and Mabel's grandchild, generations later. There are stories where the reincarnated Bill is one of the Pines themselves, having quietly carried the soul of his old enemy in his blood, without knowing it. None of these are canon, but all of these are built on a real seed that Alex Hirsch planted. The seed is that Bill is not gone. The seed is that the deal with the Axolotl bought Bill a future. The seed is that, somewhere, sometime, the triangle is going to come back. There's one more theory the fandom doesn't talk about this one as much. It's quieter. It's stranger. It's the theory that Gravity Falls itself, the town, is not a place. The theory that Gravity Falls is a hole in reality, a weak point, a wound in the dimensional membrane that has been bleeding paranormal activity for thousands of years. The shaman's curse didn't seal Bill out. The shaman's curse marked the wound. The town grew up around the wound because the wound, like a magnet, drew weird people to it. Ford came because of the wound. Stan stayed because of the wound. Dipper and Mabel were sent there because their family had been pulled to the wound for generations. Under that theory, the show isn't about a town. The show is about the slow, inevitable infection of one specific weak point in reality. And Bill was just the biggest creature that wound has ever attracted. There will be others. The wound is still there. The Pines twins went home at the end of the summer. The triangle has been reborn somewhere, and the next generation of Pines kids, whoever they end up being, are going to drive into Gravity Falls one summer and find a town that has been waiting for them. We have one more leg of this journey. We have to talk about the things the show hid in plain sight, that nobody, not even the fandom, has fully cracked. The single frames, the Twin Peaks references, the Rick and Morty crossover that may or may not be canon, the shape on the cover of the box set that, when scanned, opens a door to another website nobody has fully explored. There are still mysteries. The show isn't over. There are sequences in Gravity Falls that the human eye is not built to process at 24 frames per second. The animators put images in single frames, knowing that nobody would catch them in real time, knowing that the only audience that would ever see them is the audience that has the show downloaded and is willing to scrub through it one frame at a time. And that audience exists. That audience grew up with home media and frame advance buttons, and the ability to take a screenshot of a paused cartoon. The animators were writing for them. The most famous frame is the one in Dreamscapers. Bill, the very first time he appears as a character on the show, gives a speech about himself. He says he knows everything. He says he has seen things. And while he says it, his triangular body becomes a screen, and the screen flashes images. In the episode Dreamscaperers, there are a significant number of hidden secrets. In one scene, Bill Cipher makes his first appearance and explains that he knows a lot about the world's secrets, establishing him as a powerful, all-knowing creature. The images flash for one frame each, less than a tenth of a second. The fans have screenshotted every single one. The images are a tour of conspiracies. Some of them are recognizable real-world references. The pyramid eye on the dollar bill, Roswell, JFK crop circles. Some of them are Gravity Falls lore, the portal, the journals, the shaman, Some of them are things the fandom still cannot identify. There are shapes in those flashing frames that no real-world conspiracy maps onto, that no Gravity Falls lore explains, and that nobody, 10 years later, has cracked. What is on those frames? The unidentified ones, the ones nobody has matched to anything, are the ones the fandom still argues about. They might be in jokes from the writer's room. They might be foreshadowing for a sequel that never came. They might be, and this is the theory that has the most life in it, references to stories. This episode also has a scene that shows Grunkle Stan with a tattoo on his shoulder, which is the same as the glowing red symbol, which refers back to the portal. A tattoo. Stan has a tattoo. The show never explained it. The show, in fact, only ever shows it in a single frame in the middle of a dream sequence. The tattoo, the fans figured out, matches the symbol on the front of the portal in the basement. The man who has been pretending to be his brother for 30 years, the man whose secret identity is the entire mystery of the show, has the symbol of his brother's machine inked into his skin. When did Stan get that tattoo? Why? The show is silent. The Book of Bill is silent. The fandom has theories. The dominant one is that Stan got it after Ford disappeared as a kind of memorial, a promise to himself that he would not stop trying to get his brother back until the symbol on his skin meant something again. Stan is not a sentimental man on the surface. Stan is the con man with the cigar. But underneath the surface, the man got a tattoo of his lost brother's machine and wore it under his shirt for 3 decades, while he pretended to be that brother. That is one of those things you only see if you slow the show down. The casual viewer never knew that Stan was carrying his guilt as ink on his body. The casual viewer thought Stan was a cartoon. The slow viewer knew Stan was a man with a tattoo of his own failure. Anyone who has watched any David Lynch will eventually catch what Alex Hirsch was doing. Gravity Falls is, in many ways, a remix of Twin Peaks for children. The references are everywhere once you know to look. A small town in the Pacific Northwest with a logging industry and a forest full of secrets. An eccentric outsider arriving in town to investigate. A cryptogram that says, Stan is not what he seems. This is a reference to The Owls Are Not What They Seem from Twin Peaks, and is a foreshadowing to the episode Not What He Seems. The cryptogram in the theme song is a direct quotation from Twin Peaks. The owls are not what they seem. That was the giant's line in Twin Peaks, a cryptic warning that the audience spent a season trying to decode. Hirsch took that exact construction and applied it to Stan. The construction is the same. The mystery is the same. The buried truth, when revealed, is the same kind of revelation. The man you thought you knew was a different man the whole time. Twin Peaks ran on the network television assumption that the audience would not be able to record episodes and re-watch them. The audience watched it once on the night it aired, and then it was gone. The show was full of single-frame inserts and weird audio cues precisely because the show knew the audience would only see them once. The show was banking on the dreamlike quality of half-remembered TV. Gravity Falls is what Twin Peaks would have looked like if it had been written for the home media era. Hirsch took the same techniques, the same dense layered foreshadowing, the same hidden warnings, and built them for an audience that he knew would have the DVD set and would pause and rewind. The dreamlike quality became codifiable. The half-remembered became fully decoded. Twin Peaks left mysteries the audience had to live with. Gravity Falls left mysteries the audience could solve. Hirsch has confirmed in interviews that he is an X-Files fan as well, of the X-Files, and has been since he was a kid, and that Gravity Falls was influenced greatly by it during its creation. The X-Files was the other ghost over Gravity Falls, and Agent Trigger are dead-on Mulder and Scully parodies. If you pause at the right split second, just as Wendy throws the CD out the window, you can spot Agent's powers and Trigger in the background. I thought they would be 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 9. They are obviously seen later in the series. The agents are in the background of multiple episodes before they ever speak a line. The fandom cataloged the appearances. The agents are watching the Pines family. The agents are watching the town. The The agents are doing exactly what the X-Files would do in a small town with paranormal activity, and they are doing it for episodes before the audience even knows they are characters? What were they doing? In all those frames, the show never explains. The agents eventually get involved in the plot, eventually get tied up and embarrassed, eventually leave. But the question of how long, and the answer the fandom likes to lean into, is that the federal government, there have been agents before them. There will be agents after them. The town is on a list, somewhere, in a filing cabinet in some federal building, marked as a location of interest. The shaman's curse drew the town's borders. The federal government drew its surveillance map. The two systems have been holding the town in tension for centuries. Nothing in the show confirms this. Everything in the show is consistent with it. There is a moment in Gravity Falls where another universe's cartoon walks across the screen. The crossover was so quiet that most viewers missed it the first time. In its early seasons, Rick and Morty contained several Easter eggs for Gravity Falls, with both also having voiced characters on each other's shows. In the episode Close Rick Counters of the Rick Kind, when Rick opens up several trans-dimensional portals to escape alternate versions of Rick's, a souvenir mug from the Mystery Shack and Notepad flowed out of a portal. In Society of the Blind Eye, Stan's mug and notepad are sucked into the universe portal. Stop and read that again. In Society of the Blind Eye, Stan's mug and notepad get sucked into a portal. In Rick and Morty, in an episode called Close Rick Counters of the Rick Kind, a Mystery Shack mug and notepad come tumbling out of a portal. The same mug, the same notepad, the same animation style on the props, drawn to match Gravity Falls, dropped into a Rick and Morty episode. The two shows shared a universe, briefly, in their early seasons. Does Gravity Falls exist in the same universe as Rick and Morty? Well, it's not confirmed, but according to Justin Roiland, due to infinite realities, everything is canon. Take that for what you will. Justin Roiland, the former co-creator of Rick and Morty, said everything is canon. That was his official answer when fans asked. The two shows existed in the same multiverse. The portals Rick uses to travel between dimensions can apparently connect to the portal Ford built in his basement in Gravity Falls. Items can pass between them. Information could pass between them. There is a Rick and Morty episode where Rick has a memory bank in his garage, and the labels on the memories visible in the background include the name Stanford and the initials Bill C. Examples of this include the Rick and Morty episode, Morty's Mind Blowers, where one of the stored memories in Rick's room are labeled Stanford and Bill C. Rick has memories of Stanford Pines and Bill Cipher in his garage, has experiential memories of the Gravity Falls antagonists stored on shelves in his lab. The implication in the most literal reading is that Rick has personally met both of them. Rick has been to the Nightmare Realm. Rick has, at some point in his dimension-hopping life, crossed paths with the Triangle who tried to escape into our world, and Rick, who has the technology to remove unwanted memories and store them in vials. What did Rick see when he met Bill? What did he have to forget to keep functioning? That is one of the strangest unresolved doors in either fandom. Both shows pretend it didn't happen. By the later seasons of Rick and Morty, the Gravity Falls references were gone. The official line is that the crossover was never fully canon, but the items came out of the portal. The memories sat in the garage. The image of Bill appeared on a computer monitor in Big Trouble in Little Sanchez. A depiction of Bill Cipher appears on a computer monitor. Bill on a screen, in another show, in another universe, a cameo of a cartoon villain inside a different cartoon, treated by the second cartoon as a passing detail. The fandom has built whole theories on top of those crossovers. Some of them place Rick as a possible savior in a hypothetical Gravity Falls sequel. Some of them place Rick as a former victim of Bill who escaped. Some of them, the wildest ones, claim that Rick built his portal gun using stolen schematics from Ford's basement. None of this is canon anymore. All of this is what the fandom carries. Read that again. There is a piece of canon Gravity Falls media in which Bill Cipher, after his defeat in the finale, addresses the viewer directly and tries to get the viewer to let him possess them. The piece aired on Disney XD in 2018 as a hidden Easter egg on the complete series box set. A child holding the box set, navigating the menu of bonus features, could land on this hidden clip by accident and find a triangle on the screen, asking to enter their body. That is canon that happened. Disney aired it? The clip is brief. Bill is on the screen. He says the viewer clicked the wrong Easter egg. He says he is trapped in the box set now, doomed to relive every episode of his own defeat for eternity. And then he asks the viewer to let him out. He uses the same patter he used on Dipper, the same flattery, the same charm, the same closing line about a deal. The Easter egg has no warning, no content advisory. It is, on paper, just a piece of marketing for the box set. In practice, it is the cartoon's antagonist breaking the fourth wall and attempting to recruit the viewer into his next escape attempt. That is what Alex Hirsch is doing across the entire franchise. He is treating the audience as a participant. He is treating the screen as a porous membrane. He is treating the fandom as people who can be addressed directly by the show's villain. The Book of Bill takes the same approach. The Cypher Hunt takes the same approach. The hidden Easter egg on the box set takes the same approach. The villain of Gravity Falls is not in Gravity Falls. He is on the other side of the screen. He is asking you, the person watching the screen, to let him through at certain pages without reading them aloud, around watching the hidden Easter egg only once and never going back to it. There is a low-grade superstition, and that the Book of Bill has reinforced. The triangle is not in the show. The triangle is in the world. Alex Hirsch wanted to tell that the show never let him tell. The cut content is one of the longest threads in the fandom, and most of it lives in interviews, in DVD commentary, in podcast appearances, and in the Book of Bill itself. There was supposed to be a third season. The show was cut down. Hirsch, in interviews, has said the original arc would have continued past Weirdmageddon and into a longer story about the consequences of Bill's defeat. He chose to end it, to make a show that overstayed its welcome. He has also said, in less guarded moments, and that ending it on his own terms was better than dragging it through a slow decay. There are scenes that were drafted and never animated. There are episodes whose plots are sketched in old interviews but never appeared on screen. There is a version of Northwest Mansion Mystery where Pacifica's role was different. The original concept, as seen in a freeze-frame bonus in the bonus features on the complete series box set, was for Pacifica to ask both twins to help hunt a ghost at the mansion while trying to seduce Dipper, but Dipper rejects her. The original draft was a more cynical story. The final draft was the sadder one. Pacifica's growth, the gates opening, the wooden guests turning back to flesh, came out of a rewrite. There are conversations between Bill and Ford that were drafted and cut. There are scenes between Stan and his father that were planned and never made. There's a whole sequence of Ford's 30 years in the Nightmare Realm. The Book of Bill recovered some of this. The book showed us pages from Journal 3 that Ford had torn out. The book showed us Bill's history in his own words. The book gave the fandom a version of the third season that the show was never allowed to make compressed into a single book. But there are still gaps. The book is the most we have. The book is not the whole. The fandom has, over the last decade, written what feels like a fifth season's worth of fan fiction trying to fill those gaps. Some of the fan work is exceptional. Some of it has been quietly endorsed by Hirsch in offhand tweets and podcast comments. The line between fan canon and official canon has, in places, gotten thin. The triangle is reborn in 1,000 different ways across 1,000 different stories, and Hirsch has not contradicted any of them. We have one final chunk left. We are going to close on the things the show whispered at the very edges. The standards and practices fights, the censorship the show ducked, the lines that were almost cut, the ending that Disney almost did not air, and the question of what happens next. Now that the Book of Bill is in the world, the triangle is loose again in the multiverse, and the Pines twins are growing up. We are nearly done. Settle in for the close. The lines Disney almost cut Alex Hirsch has been telling the story for years, in pieces, on podcasts, and at conventions. The show he wanted to make was not always the show that aired. There was a department at Disney called Standards and Practices, and Standards and Practices got involved in every episode. They had rules. They had limits. They had a list of things, and Hirsch, like every cartoon creator who ever worked under a major studio, spent a lot of his time figuring out how to say the things they would not let him say. Some of the stories he has told are surreal in how mundane the censorship was. Executive meddling. According to Alex Hirsch, standards and practices mandated that Dipper have a bowl of fruit in the midst of his junk food. Alex Hirsch, S&P had some rule that week, with like a random bucket of cauliflower nearby. A bucket of cauliflower? The episode where Dipper is eating junk food while trying to crack a password had to include a piece of healthy produce in the frame because standards and practices had decided that week that unhealthy snacks on screen needed to be balanced with healthy snacks. Hirsch describes it as a rule that week, which means it might have been a different rule the next week, which means he was working under a constantly shifting set of constraints he could not predict. He just had to keep putting fruit in the corners of frames. There were scenes Hirsch wanted to write that he was told he could not write. There were words he wanted his characters to say that he had to rewrite into approximations. There were jokes that were vetoed because they would land in the wrong way with a children's audience. The show, on the whole, got around these limits by encoding the adult content in places the censors did not look. The credits, the whispers, the single frames, the codes, the censors checked the dialogue. The censors did not check the cryptograms. This is part of why the show is the way it is. Hirsch was in some real sense forced to invent the cipher system as a workaround. He could not write what he wanted in the open. He could write what he wanted in code. The fandom that learned to decode the show was accidentally the fandom that learned to read the parts of the show Disney did not approve. The kids who solved the credits were doing media archaeology on a censored text. The Book of Bill is the freedom Hirsch never had. It is published by a publishing house, not by a children's network. It carries a warning on the cover about being suitable for older readers. It contains material that the show could not have aired in any form. Beware, this book travels to dimensions meant for older readers. That sentence, that simple sentence, is Hirsch finally being allowed to write. The audience that decoded the cryptograms, the audience that bought the journals, the audience that grew up, the audience that is now in their 20s, ready for the version of Gravity Falls that the Disney network would never let him make. And the book delivers. The book has the references to alcohol that the show could only hint at. The book has the descriptions of torture that the show could only imply. The book has the implications about Bill and Ford's relationship that the show could only frame as friendship. The book has the cosmic horror that the show could only suggest. Through silhouettes in the background, it is the same story. It is the same characters. It is just the unrated version, the ending that almost did not air. There are credible accounts, scattered across years of interviews, that the original ending of the show was different, not radically different. The Pines twins still leave Gravity Falls at the end of summer. Stan still gets his memory back. Bill still dies. But the framing of certain scenes, the length of certain moments, the inclusion of certain lines was contested. The memory erasure sequence, the one where Mabel pulls Stan back from the brink with the photo album, was reportedly longer in early drafts. Disney, depending on who you ask, requested edits. Some of the edits made the sequence punchier. Some of the edits removed beats that Hirsch wanted to keep. The version that aired is the version. Hirsch defends in interviews, but he has admitted in passing comments that there are scenes he wishes had been longer. The shot of Stan with no memory of his family, the shot where he looks at the twins with empty eyes, was reportedly tested with multiple takes. Some versions had him recognize Mabel almost immediately. Some versions had him take much longer. The version that aired is the middle ground. It is long enough to hurt. It is short enough to recover from. It is, by design, the most painful version Disney would let the show air. The bittersweet ending, the bus pulling away from Gravity Falls, with Dipper and Mabel inside, was apparently a fight. Disney wanted, in some accounts, a cleaner, happy ending. Hirsch wanted, in some accounts, a more ambiguous one. The version that aired is, again, the compromise. The twins are happy. The Grunkles wave from the gas station. The bus drives off into the morning light. And the audience knows that this is not the end, that something will pull these kids back, that a summer in Gravity Falls is not a summer you walk away from. The cryptogram in the credits of that episode, the one that decoded to Goodbye Gravity Falls, was the message Hirsch put on the screen for the fans who had been with him the whole time. For example, after decoding the message at the end of the series finale, Weirdmageddon 3, Take Back the Falls, fans uncovered the eerie statement, "Goodbye Gravity Falls." 2 words. The official sign-off. The thing the show finally said, in code to the people who had been decoding the show for 2 years. But goodbye was not really goodbye. The Book of Bill came out in 2024. The Cypher Hunt brought the statue out of the woods. The Triangle escaped his stone form in the real world when somebody stole the statue. The Theraprism revealed that Bill survived. The Axolotl made a deal. The reincarnation is theoretically possible. Hirsch keeps almost, but not quite, confirming that more is coming. Goodbye! Gravity Falls was the show's goodbye. It was not the franchise's goodbye. The franchise has, in the years since, been quietly building something. The book is part of it. The Cypher Hunt was part of it. The hidden Easter egg on the box set was part of it. There is a slow, patient construction happening in the spaces around the original series, and the fandom is watching it, and the fandom is waiting. The questions that will probably never be answered, some mysteries, are mysteries, because the show held the answer back for a later reveal. Some mysteries are mysteries, because the show ran out of time and never got to them. And some mysteries are mysteries because Hirsch deliberately decided to leave them open. The Jeffrey Canuck memory canister, most notable on the list of things that are still unsolved even after the end of the series, is the memory canister labeled Jeffrey Canuck. It would seem that this was an important person since his memories were stored right next to Blind Eye founder McGucket and richest man in town Preston Northwest. But the name never showed up again. The mystery continues, ETCA. A jar in a basement, a name nobody knows, a position on the shelf. That suggests importance, and nothing else. Jeffrey Canuck is a person whose memories were considered worth preserving and whose identity has been hidden from the audience for a decade. He may be a character Hirsch had plans for. He may be a leftover from a cut episode. He may be a name Hirsch put on a label as a deliberate teaser, expecting that the audience would notice it and obsess over it, and never planning to explain it. He may just be a name. The not knowing is the point. The shaman who first banished Bill from the valley. The hero who saved the world before the show even started. The figure who never gets a name, never gets a face, never gets a backstory. The fandom has written him 100 different ways. None of those versions are canon. The canon is silence. The man who drew the circle is invisible to the show that depends on his curse. The dimension Ford spent the most time in. The 30 years across the multiverse. The show gives us glimpses. According to the official copy of Journal 3, Stanford went through many different dimensions on the other side of the portal. One of them was an alternate version of his own life, where things had gone his way. And Bill was never a threat. One was a dimension where everything was the letter M. A dimension where everything was the letter M. The fans have asked about that one for years. What does that mean? What did Ford see there? What did he eat? How long did he stay? Hirsch has, on a few occasions, said that he has answers in his head for these questions. He just has never written them down. The dimension of M lives in his head, and in the speculation of the fans, and it has never been put on paper. The alternate Ford in the alternate dimension. The one where Bill was never a threat. The one where Ford had a happy life. Ford apparently met that version of himself. Ford apparently saw the version of his own life where his arrogance had not destroyed him. What did the two of them say to each other? Did the alternate Ford try to keep our Ford? Did our Ford want to stay? The show never tells you, the journal hints. The fan fiction explodes, the canon shrugs, the exact mechanism of the Axolotl. Why a higher god decided to extend mercy to a creature like Bill. What deal Bill made. What the Axolotl gets out of it. Whether the Axolotl has done this for other fallen creatures. Whether there is a whole population, somewhere in the multiverse, of reincarnated former villains, living new lives with no memory of who they were. The Book of Bill hints at all of this. The Book of Bill never quite confirms it. The exact location of Stan's tattoo, the timing of it, the story of how he got it. The journal pages Ford tore out that even the Book of Bill did not fully recover. The unsolved coded messages on the original fan website that nobody after all this time has cracked. The coordinates on the website that point to a real place in Oregon that nobody has fully explained. The single frames in Dreamscaperers that the fandom has never matched to anything. These are not mysteries the show forgot. These are mysteries the show chose. Alex Hirsch built a story whose surface was complete and whose depths were intentionally bottomless. The complete story is the surface. The depths are an invitation. The audience that wants to keep going can keep going forever, because the depths never end. The triangle is not done. The Book of Bill ended with Bill in the Theraprism. The show ended with Bill dead in Stan's head. The cipher hunt ended with the statue stolen from the forest. And every one of those endings is, in some way, a beginning. Hirsch has talked in interviews about the idea of returning to Gravity Falls. He has not committed to it. He has not denied it. He has said, in the careful language of a creator who does not want to be held to a deadline, that he is open to the possibility. He has said that the Book of Bill is a kind of bridge. A bridge to what he has not specified. The fandom has interpreted Bridge as a sequel. The fandom has been wrong before. The fandom is hopeful anyway. What a sequel would look like is anyone's guess. The original Pines twins would be in their 20s by now. The original supporting cast would be older. The town would have moved on or not. Bill would be reincarnated or not. Ford would still be alive or not. There are 100 ways the next story could go, and Hirsch has not committed to any of them. What the fandom believes, what the fandom has settled into believing over the last few years, is that the next story is coming, whether Hirsch announces it or not. The Book of Bill was too long, too detailed, too full of seeded threads to be a one-off project. The book is a setup. The setup has not paid off yet. The payoff is coming. Maybe in a few years, maybe in a decade. The fandom has decoded credits, hunted statues, dug through source code, written fan fiction, gathered at conventions, watched the show in reverse, listened to whispers, paused at single frames, and built a relationship with this story that does not depend on Hirsch ever continuing it. That is the secret at the bottom of all the secrets in Gravity Falls. The show built its own audience into a community capable of carrying it. The cartoon trained the fandom to be its own keeper. The codes, the hunts, the Easter eggs, the hidden frames, the cursed book were all a long training program. The fandom is the show now. The fandom has been the show for years. The Pines family lives in fan fiction. The Mystery Shack stands in fan art. The Triangle still draws himself in the corners of forums and in the margins of notebooks, in classrooms and on dorm room walls around the world. The cartoon ended. The story did not. That is the part Hirsch did on purpose. He built something that would survive him. He built something that would survive Disney. He built something that would survive the end of his own creative interest in it. The show ended in 2016 and the story is still spreading. The Book of Bill came out in 2024 and the story is still spreading. The reincarnated triangle, in whatever form, is going to walk into someone's notebook tomorrow, and the story will spread a little further. If you have been listening to this for the last several hours and you're still awake, you're part of this. The audience that decodes the credits is the audience the show was made for. The audience that listens to the analysis is the audience that keeps the analysis alive. The triangle is in the wallpaper, in the rugs, in the windows, in the source code of websites, in the back rooms of bookstores, in the credits of cartoons, in the margins of journals, in the dreams of people who watched a small show on Disney XD 10 years ago. You can close your eyes now. The triangle is just a shape. He cannot reach through the screen unless you let him. The cartoon is over. The threats are not real. The codes are puzzles. The hunts are games. The statue in the forest was just stone. The town of Gravity Falls is a drawing on a page. Stan got his memory back. The Pines twins went home. The summer ended. The story is finished. The story is also still going. Both of these are true. That is the gift Alex Hirsch left his audience. A story that ended cleanly and continued anyway. A goodbye that was not really a goodbye? A triangle that died and survived, a town that you can leave and that you will return to. Settle in. Settle deep. Let your breathing slow. The Mystery Shack is still standing somewhere on a hill in Oregon, in your head if nowhere else, with the lights off and the gift shop locked and the rug on the floor with the triangle on it. The window in the attic still has the eye. The journal is still hidden in the woods. The memory canister still sits on a shelf in a basement under a museum. The cryptogram is still running in the credits of episodes you watched a long time ago. And somewhere,